This is the Vision 79 podcast, where my friend Sander and myself, Mason, discuss recent developments in our business and personal growth. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sander's is 40, mine is 39, and we have similar ambition to progress in business and personal growth. Many successful people have started small, just like us, but very few of them have documented their early years. They often say they wish they had, and given we believe in learning lessons from others, we intend to be the first to document our journey from start to finish. This is simply a documentary of our lives, and as such, we do not monetize these videos, so enjoy the ad-free content. Today, we have an incredible opportunity to record in a space that means a lot to both of us with some cars that mean the world to us. Racing has always been a pillar of this podcast, and I'm excited to emphasize the importance motorsport has had on our personalities, business endeavors, and our relentless pursuit to improve. The American Muscle Car Museum in Melbourne, Florida continues to give back to its community, and we are deeply appreciative to every member of the organization from top to bottom. We'll speak more in detail about the museum a little later, but first, we start every episode, including this one, with a brief update on where we're at in our business and personal lives so we can go back and review these in the future and know where we're at in our journey. But I think we're going to get out of the car to do that.
Let's do it.
All right, now we're out of the car. What's your business update this week?
My business update this week is my Slash account is still in review. So still waiting on that one. But
aren't you talking to the owner of the company?
I am, and he requested a bunch of documents of ownership of the different bank accounts that I currently have right now. So
Okay.
I sent all that over to him, and he forwarded it off to the team.
Got it.
So hopefully have an answer early next week would be sweet. So you're not going to bug him too much because I do have my Wise business bank account and I have my Chase business bank account. So
All right. Well, is
that's
the
fine.
Slash account a line of credit or is it a debit
It's
account?
both. It's a bank account and line of credit.
Okay, got it. So you're waiting on the account because it frees up more money in the line of credit, but you're not limited so much because you still have.
It also
Debit
offers
account.
faster transfers, and with the new agency that I'll be working with, the only way I can do instant transfers is through a US bank account that's
Ah.
not Wise or Pioneer.
Okay, got it. So you're
Because
switching at it.
Wise and Pioneer, they've had issues with in the past, and so they just say, if you send through Wise or Pioneer,
Mhm.
we are essentially going to wait for the payment to go through, which on an ACH transfer can be anywhere from 1 to 3 days.
Okay,
So with the Slash, if I send them proof of payment, they'll add the money in immediately. So it's a little bit more convenient on that end.
got it.
Which
So
is why.
it'll speed things up once you get it.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
So it'd be cool to get it sooner rather than later.
Right.
Got
Right.
it. I see what you're
So-
saying.
That's what I'm that's one of the things I got.
Uh-huh.
Ads are currently running with a backup agency that I've had for a while, just kind of in the background. So I got those fired up with that agency. I had to wait for a new ad account to be issued for an additional product, not because one got disabled, but I'm running them on that platform right now. If that platform is stable, it would be a lot better for scaling because it doesn't charge you a percentage per spend. It's a monthly fee. It's $300 a month for up to $3,000, $600 a month for up to $6,000 in spend a month, and then $800 a month for unlimited spend per month.
So that's at the lowest setting, that's like $300 a month, right?
Right.
How does that compare to what you're spending right now? Or what
Well,
point
right now my fee is around 4%
Okay.
per ad spend. So, if I spend $1,000, I spend 40 on actual fees, right?
So when $300 becomes 4%,
Well, it's when
got it.
800 becomes 4%,
Got it.
right?
And
Because
so
300 is on $300 a month is only up to 3,000, so it's 10% right now.
that's 20 grand of spending.
I believe approximately.
800
Yeah.
divided by 4 is 200. 200 times 100 is 20K, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
So
sounds right.
$20,000 a month, and
Yeah.
that's when that becomes profitable
Correct.
compared to the 4%.
Yeah, and the
Okay.
reason that I'm willing to eat a little bit initially is because ad accounts do hold data and they
Right.
do hold optimization potential. And so if I can have this run consistently, once I get into quarters 3 and quarters 4, I'm likely going to be spending, I really hope, more than 20 grand a month on ads. And so at that point, I don't want to be held back by fees.
Right.
For example, my mentor spends 15K a day on ads.
Right.
So 4% of 15K starts to be a lot really quickly.
4% of 15K would be.
It would be like just for estimate's sake, someone can do the math off camera, but like $500 a day essentially would be on
roughly.
fees.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
150 times 4, so that's $600, right?
Yeah.
So 600 a day compared to the 800 a month of the
Yeah.
the new spending model, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
did something similar with the brokerages where it was like, for Remax Elite, it was like
Mm.
you're at 70/30 when you pay 400 annually and 400 a month, and then after a million in gross sales, then you bump up to 95/5. And so,
Yeah.
like, at what point does that become more profitable than the, you know, different split at other brokerages? But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Right, right. So that's something. So my ads are running as of this morning.
Awesome.
I'm just running my old ads for now because you have to each one of these accounts you got to warm them up slow. So I'm just running some old ads for the weekend, and then Monday I'll release new ads on it.
Hmm.
And then my Meta agency accounts, I will have those set up as backups because I'm going to try and test this to see if it's stable enough. It was stable in the past, but I just want to verify over the course of a month. I'm still going to use the Meta ad agency accounts, and I'm going to use those for product testing.
Got it.
Because it's a lot more affordable to just do a small percentage on a product test with them. If it's just 4%, if I spend a week at $100 a day, so $700, 4% of $700. Not bad.
Yeah. So those are the accounts that you have right now that are flowing. They
Correct.
were locked up last week, right? They're back again.
No, this is a different agency, so different
Okay.
accounts.
Got it.
Yeah, these are accounts that I've had for a while in the background. The reason that I couldn't fund them after my ad accounts got locked up with the other older agency is because I didn't have the money in my bank account
Got it.
because I had switched bank accounts from my SSN Wise account to my EIN Wise account, and so my Shopify payments were delayed. So I couldn't afford to fund the account because there's a minimum transfer of 500 per account. I have 2 accounts, so my minimum transfer was $1,000.
Yeah.
So I needed $1,000 in that account to transfer over.
Greg was talking to me yesterday. He's doing the grill cleaning business now,
Yeah.
right? And he was talking to me about how when he and Tyler had done this previously, they were cleaning grills at like apartment complexes. And so I told him, I was like, hey, dude, Integra Station, where I live, has outdoor grills and smokers and stuff free for people to use. And they have ceramic smokers. And my dad owns a ceramic smoker, and cleaning those things is an absolute nightmare. And
Mhm.
they would certainly pay for someone to go clean it. I would recommend you reach out to them. I can put you into contact if you'd like. And he was like, oh, yeah, I want to. But last time the apartment complexes wanted like a business EIN to actually submit payment.
Yeah.
And I don't have that yet. I don't know what Tyler did last time with the LLC filing or whatever.
Oh,
And I was like, actually, if you're a sole proprietorship, you don't need an EIN. You can give them your social security number. And
yeah.
he was like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, I can't remember. I haven't done it specifically because for Kahuna, we had an LLC. Now for real estate, I'm writing off business expenses. That's just going to be sole proprietorship. I know that's my social, but I'm pretty sure that Sander had done some drop shipping stuff before the LLC, just using
Yeah.
your SSN.
You actually can also get an EIN under a sole proprietorship, which I did not know.
But you have to file, right?
Yeah, you have to file.
Greg doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I don't know. It's Greg, right?
yeah.
So
Right.
the less friction he can add, the better. And I was like, just give him your social security number. Because really, at the end of the day, the function of an SSN or an EIN is just so that the person paying knows that you're
Real.
in the IRS database and they can go after you and send your shit to collections if you don't pay or whatever.
Right.
Right. So,
Right.
yeah. Anyways.
So, working on that. New ads are in work, and I actually have a bunch of drafts that I released and then immediately got locked up. So
You
I'm
can still run the drafts.
just waiting to put them out to Monday because I don't want to put out 10 or 12 ads on a brand new account and just have it flagged, right? I would rather wait a couple days and then put them on there. So
Right.
I read some stuff, recommendations from this specific agency and whatever. They have a bunch of PDFs, which I like, recommendations and stuff. And that was one of their recommendations was like, don't release more than 5 a day on a new ad account.
So
Uh,
are you recording all of this stuff that you're finding, like tips and tricks to avoid being flagged by Meta?
Yeah,
That's how
so
it's
I have a lessons learned document for
Got it.
Facebook ads, and then I have another one for general drop shipping.
Gotcha.
I think that's how I have it organized. I know I have two. And then I also every month I take notes in a notes app. And those notes are in reflection of things that I learned through group chats in like WhatsApp or Telegram.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, I do that every month. So I just
Right.
scroll through my chat at the end of each month. I go through, I write all that stuff down,
Yeah.
kind of categorize it. And so I keep a lessons learned documents.
You know,
Yeah.
the treasure hunting stuff that I was doing a while back, there's a Discord that everyone is a part of that's doing the treasure hunt. People
Mm,
share ideas, whatever, right? And they do like nightly voice chats. There's like 40, 50 people in a voice
yeah.
chat, and they share ideas. But apparently someone has been recording that voice chat and recording the script of all the text from the Discord chats
Yeah.
and feeding that to AI. And they say, compile the best ideas, put it in a YouTube video. And then the AI is doing a voice, reading everything out loud. It's doing direct quotes and then it's summarizing and giving analyses, right? And then it puts it to videos of like the Rocky Mountains or whatever. It's
Yeah.
fucking incredible. But I'm wondering what program they're using, because all of the like conversations that you have, you could feed to that AI and then have it track all this stuff for you so that you don't forget anything. Don't
Yeah,
miss.
yeah, I could. I don't love the AI summarizing feature overall. I've tried a bunch of the ChatGPT types,
Did
and
they
I
just
find that
miss stuff?
it doesn't miss stuff. It either I don't convey the importance of certain things well, or it doesn't do a good job reading through and understanding what's important and what's more back burner.
So it
And
doesn't
so
understand what's valuable information or not.
yeah, and I kinda know I think that it's just not conveyed well on the PDFs I upload because I'll just write stuff down in list format. I don't write like, "Oh, this is super important," right?
Got it.
Because when I'm reading through, like, I'll read this bullet point, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I remember that sucked,"
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
for me, like, it's easy enough. So I don't love the summarizing feature with the AI. What I do like doing with the AI, platforms is uploading different research documents
Mhm.
and going, read this research document, and then I want you to create a persona of the person that you've, or like these different three personas from the research that I've done, and
Interesting.
then tablize like five different problems and five different solutions with of five different stages of awareness and
Right.
kind of create like a multi-layer table. And then I'm like, okay, great. Now I have a framework that I understand kind of like um my personas, like
Right.
who it is. I understand maybe what their problems are in summary format, and I understand kind of where they fall on stages of awareness side of things.
So stages of awareness is how aware of the product they are?
Yeah, so
Got
it
it.
goes um all the way from unaware to most aware. And then in between you have unaware, problem aware, solution aware,
Got it.
product aware, most aware.
Got it. Okay. Cool.
And so depending on where you fall, you understand the kind of scope of whatever business you're in, or the persona understands the scope of the business
Right.
that you're advertising about, right? So if I were to sell, you know, um giraffe shaped, crescent wrenches for working on Porsches, that's real niche and weird, right?
Yeah.
So all of my audience would be unaware.
Right.
If I'm going to sell blue t-shirts, most of my audience is going to be most aware, right?
Right.
But understanding where your market falls comes down to research.
Right.
And then through that research, you can kind of form a persona and where they lie.
Yeah.
And so that's something I like using AI for.
Mhm.
But honestly, I've been kind of shying away from it a little bit more and focusing more on like my own thoughts and kind of how I perceive the persona and stuff like that, because I've
Yeah.
done the AI stuff for a while and I feel like it's coming out in a way that feels surface level
Mm.
in a sense, not always, but sometimes. And I realized that the time I take to teach the AI kind of like how to really morph into a persona, I could have done it
Right.
too. And so I am teaching on the background because I see it as valuable long term, but it's not like I'm going to spend 3 weeks just teaching AI and then jump in. Because also I don't have I don't really honestly have the knowledge band to be able to understand where my market's at yet. Like I've done a ton of research, I've made a ton of ads, but it's a massive learning process. I
Gotcha.
should really understand where the market sits. And so I don't feel as though it would be worth it for me to educate an AI based on my understanding at this point today, when I don't know if my understanding at this point today is really a good reflection of where the market really is.
Yeah. That's true.
And so I haven't done that, but
Mhm.
um
Well, and also the Discord that I'm talking about, there's a message sent probably every 10 seconds for the entire 24-hour cycle. There's so much information that I can't keep up if my full-time job was to read it all. And
right.
so having AI condense all that information is really helpful, but there's maybe less conversation happening that's more important in your group chats. So it's
Yeah,
easier to
I
keep
mean, I
up
don't
and
have that
like
many
pull nuggets.
conversations.
Right, exactly. So it's easier to crush that data.
Definitely,
Right.
definitely. Also, I'm working on editing my products page for the new product that I'm working on, and I have a list of about 10 different content creators that have reached out to me through Instagram wanting to create content for uh the business.
They've contacted you?
They contacted me.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
And a few of them I utilized for the current products I have,
Right.
but I have about 10 that I haven't utilized. And over the course of the last month, I've emailed them and essentially said, hey, we're releasing a new product in the near future. If you'd like it, I can keep you informed about it. And then when it comes out, you'd be welcome to do a content trade. I'll send you the product for free. You send me back some content, right?
Okay.
Essentially, long story short.
Yeah.
And so I have those like ready to rock and roll.
Okay.
And so once my product page is done for the product, I'm going to send them out, and that's an easy way for me to get some free content flowing
Yeah.
on the back end. And I'm also going to order the product for myself too.
Sweet.
But and then yeah, I'll be adding other products as upsells and aftersells onto the site. I haven't done it yet, but that's something I'm going to be working on over this weekend.
Gotcha.
But that's about all I got for business.
Awesome.
So what about you? What you got?
I have less this week than I have in weeks past, which is
Well, it's
funny.
also been Monday to Friday instead of like
Great point.
Sunday to Sunday because we didn't have a weekend before this podcast. I
Not
think
only
a lot
that-
of work I crank out on a weekend, and so like
Yeah.
it's a little bit lighter for me because I've been at work for 10, 12 hours a day. So
Not only that, but we recorded in the middle of the day on Monday. So
Yeah.
this is like Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And let's face it, Thursday was spent writing the podcast. So
Right.
I've got a little bit less, but I still got a bunch done. A lot of the stuff this week has been working on building the foundation for marketing. So I made accounts on Zillow and Realtor.com because when people are looking to buy homes, the first 3 places that they go to are Google, just search like real estate agent in Melbourne, or Zillow, because everybody surfs Zillow just to look at houses, or Realtor.com, which is a dedicated site to find real estate agents in specific areas, right? So I made accounts on those 2 platforms. I finalized the design of my business cards and ordered 100 of them. They were supposed to get here yesterday. It turns out they're getting here today, which is funny because Grace ordered hers like 2 days after me, and they're also getting here today. But
Yeah.
those should be in. I also designed a just sold in your neighborhood flyer because although we didn't represent the sellers in this neighborhood, we represented the buyer, which is almost more difficult to do because I can come to you and say, Sander, let's list your house to get it sold. I just made this listing and found a buyer in X number of time. Or I can come to you and say, Sander, one of my buyers just found a house that they like in this neighborhood. I have more people like that. So if you and I list the house, I can get you a guy really quickly to buy your house, right? And so I designed these just sold in your neighborhood. Reach out if you'd like a CMA to get a better understanding of what your house may be worth. And I put Grace and I on the flyer. I took notes from some of the flyers Tyler used to mail out. And I finished it and I emailed it to the company that Blue Marlin uses to print all of their stuff. So I can send this design to this company and a mailing list of all of the houses in that neighborhood. There's a tool in the MLS, multiple listing service, called IMAP. I don't really know what the acronym stands for, but the TLDR is I can set a radius and then make a selection. So like pick all 3-bed, 2-bath homes with a pool in this area, zip code, let's say, right? And then it'll give me the property address and the owner's address in case they don't live at the property, right? So Grace generated one of those mailing lists. I edited out the duplicates and stuff like that. So I sent the design and the mailing list to this company, and they're just going to print and send them for me, which is really helpful. And I went into the office on, I can't remember what day, and I talked to the broker about it. And I was like, hey, man, I've got this stuff ready to go. They say I need special permission for like one-off, like custom designs. Am I doing this right? And I showed it to him, and he was like, you did a good job designing it. I wouldn't put the sale price on the flyer because then people have like a waypoint to gauge off of. They might think their home is worth less or more. Don't give them that. Just tell them like maybe how long it took to get sold or whatever, right? You want to give people a reason to call. You don't want to give them the answer to everything on the flyer. And I was like, that's a good point. And he was like, but just so you know, every quarter we do an analysis of what our return on ad spend is for the different designs. And then we upload that design to our hub. So if you go on the hub and just pick the design you want and then just send that company I was talking about the photo of you, they'll do everything else. So like they'll do the design. And I was like, oh, okay, that's handy. I like the idea of being able to design my own stuff because I have different ideas than the templates they have available.
Sure.
But I'm going to try the first few with their style things to see if it works and then maybe improve on if I can rationalize it, if I'm not seeing good return, right? So for example, I'm trying to follow the Hormozy principle of like whisper, speak, shout, or whatever. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is whisper, speak, shout, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first one is like a house sold in your neighborhood. And then the second one is like, hey, I see that you bought your house in 2008 for $100,000. This one sold for 280. We could probably get you 200 for it. Call for a CMA. And then the last one is like, John, I've been sending you letters. You know me now. We're good friends. Like, I see you bought your house at this number. This is the other number that the house just sold for. That means you have X amount in equity that we can leverage today. It's a great time to sell. Contact me. And then after that third flyer, I'll go door knocking and say, hey, you may have seen my flyers. My name is Mason, et cetera. Right. And the flyers that Blue Marlin is offering, like the templates, they aren't staged like that. They're just all informational, which is,
Yeah.
they're good templates. But if I think I can improve, then I'll probably ask for special permission to improve them if I can say why. So those are my flyers. My Google business profile is now publicly available,
Very nice.
even though my address isn't verified yet. So it just says Mason, who's serving all of Florida, no specific address, but that's okay. And so I sent the profile to Justin, who I helped find an apartment a few weeks ago. So a big thank you to Justin. He left me a 5-star review, so I'm now officially a 5-star Google agent. And I reached out to our client who we just helped buy a few weeks ago, and I asked him for permission to post a just sold photo with him in the photo, and also asked him to write me a Google review, me and Grace, right?
Mm.
And he hasn't responded yet, but I'm hoping that he does. If he doesn't respond, I'm just gonna have to post the just sold photo without him in it, like just a photo of the property, because I have to get some type of advertising from it,
Mm.
right? But I would really appreciate a Google review. That means a lot to real estate agents and search engine optimization, right? Um, so that's that. Back to marketing. We might have to design our own open house signs. Um, I did you ever take aviation human factors in college?
Aviation human factors?
Yeah.
I think I took like an engineering human factor style thing. I don't know if it was
Got it.
aviation specific.
Human factors is like the study of how people interact with like the world
Yeah.
around them, right? Like machines and stuff. And in that class, I learned a few different things. I'm gonna go back and revisit my notes about what colors do people see from furthest away? What
Mm.
shapes are instantly recognizable? Like how much information is too much information? What fonts work the best, etc. To
Yeah.
try to design an open house sign that's optimized. Because again, Blue Marlin offers templates, but a lot of the templates I see are a little bit cluttered, or like the shape of the sign is in an arrow. And so like you look at the sign and you don't realize it's an arrow until you read like open house. Here's the address, here's the agent name and number, and then here's the face. And myself personally, while I'm driving and I see like a garage sale sign, I've never once read an address on a garage sale sign.
Hmm.
I see garage sale from the main road, I turn off, and then I start looking for the house. So I want some open house signs that just say open house, big bold letters, and an arrow pointing in the direction of the open house, right? And then once you follow that sign, maybe there's one with my face on it and it still says open house. And then as you get closer, maybe there's one with the address, right? Because now you're committed in looking for the address, right? You're less likely to recognize an address driving 60 miles an hour on the road,
Mhm.
let alone be able to read it, right? So I might have to design my own, and I think I'll have to get special permission for those too if I want the Blue Marlin branding on it, which I'd like to have, right? But
Yeah.
I just have to ask. Um, I also am going to get one of their Blue Yeti coolers. They've got custom branded big Yeti coolers with their brand on the lid, and I'm going to get that to put on top of my desk at work along with the plant to become a waypoint in the office. I might have mentioned it before. They got a new shipment of coolers in this week, so I'm going to go this weekend and take a look at them. The sales manager left the company, which is a bummer. He was very nice to me as I was onboarding, and he was very helpful. Um, but he has decided to leave the company and go sell as an agent somewhere else. So he wants to go back to sales. It's what aligns with his goals the best. But the reason that's significant is because as an agent, the first person I go to is the sales manager. And then he will direct me either to one of the staff members who handles social media, graphics, videography, editing, CRMs, etc.
Mhm.
Or he'll send me to the brokers who are above him, right?
Yeah.
And there are two brokers right now. But now with the sales manager gone, the only person I have to go to, unless I know a staff member in specific can help me, is to go to the brokers, which is a great opportunity to learn from the best and build rapport with the brokers directly, which I'm looking forward to. Um, the next update is that we met Frank Cabasa at Cloud Parlor. We were up there because it's only 5 minutes from the Blue Marlin Merritt Island
Mm.
office. But Frank was very nice, and he he
I
said,
don't
"Hey,"
know who that is.
me neither. He
Oh.
said, I just met him, but I wanted to name drop him because he was nice to us.
Oh, okay.
But he said that he works with some other guy, Lee. And he was like, "Hey, Lee and I do a lot of stuff together. We do a lot of open houses. We don't always have time for it. If you guys are interested, we can send you open house invites to just go cover the open house." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Absolutely." And then driving home from the gym last night, I saw a house with an open house sign on it, or a for sale sign on it. It was a blue barnlet for sale sign. And I had this idea, and I told Grace, I was like, "What if we go on the MLS and look at every house that is on the market currently to be sold by a blue marlin agent, and then reach out to them and say, hey, you don't want to hold open houses every week. I don't have any leads right now. Let me cover whatever open houses you don't want to run. Because while I'm running an open house, anybody that comes through is my lead. So even if they don't like the house that they're touring, maybe they'll like a different house, and then now I'm their agent to that. And if they do like the house that I'm hosting the open house for, I could represent them as buyers for the guy who I'm running the open house for, who's representing the sellers. And that's dependent on the brokers or on the agent. Some agents are like, hey, if you get someone who wants to buy the house, I'm going to double in the deal, but I'll give you a percentage split. It's dependent on the situation, right? But right now, my only way to get leads is to reach out to people I know, run Facebook ads, or the third way. No, those are the only two ways that Alex Ramezzi's taught. The other way is to go find other people to do it for you, right? So running the open houses is a great way to meet more people. And then the last business update I have is that I scheduled my onboarding video for next week. They've got a guy from, I think he's from Britain, who's their on-site videographer. He does really great work. So I'm going next week to schedule to film that video.
Sweet. Very cool.
That's my business update.
There you go.
What's your life update?
My life update is I did the BMW control arms and
Mhm.
got an alignment on that car. So it feels a little bit better.
Did you get it done in time for your appointment Monday?
The appointment was Tuesday,
Yep.
but yes, I did.
Awesome.
Barely missed the rain. Very fortunate. So
Great job.
yeah, cranked them out. I think it took me about, with a 30-minute break, I think it took me about 2.5 hours for both sides.
That's really great time.
Yeah,
That's really good.
and that includes like lifting it up, getting organized.
Yeah.
So yeah, I made good time on it.
That's about how long it
Uh,
takes me to do an oil change. Jesus.
yeah, I was cranking.
I got
I
to
was
step up my
cranking.
game.
Just because I didn't want to be out there and doing it. To be honest,
Yeah.
I didn't really feel like doing that on a
No, I
evening.
understand.
But I turned in a work certification that I've been throwing on the back burner for far too long at work.
Yeah.
So turned that in, and
What is a work certification?
this is like one of the many certifications we have for some engineering work that we do. So this allows me to run like ground support equipment operations on my own,
Okay.
instead of like with a buddy all the time.
Gotcha.
It allows me to do like preventative maintenance procedures and a couple other things. So
So it allows you to do more tasks.
yeah,
Got
pretty
it.
much. Um,
That's your favorite.
yeah, and I also have a interview with another company on Monday. It's a phone call interview, just like a basic get to know you.
Is
think
this the one I know about?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So, looking at that, and it's kind of like a talent acquisition phone call style thing. I think it will be relatively informal, just kind of like, are you say who you say you are?
Yeah.
Are you who you say you are? You get what I'm
Right.
saying? But Bleh.
That's so funny you mentioned the certification because we're supposed to do like trainings, like HR
Yeah,
trainings. They give them to you like maybe
we have a ton of trainings.
one every 2 months, right? Yeah. Um I did one 2 months ago. I completed it, said complete, check the box on the certification, and then the next day I get an email saying it's overdue. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. So I do it again, same deal, same email saying it's overdue. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm just not going to do it, right? It's been like 2 months now, and I'm starting to get concerned because it's the violence in the workplace training. And so I messaged my manager and I was like, I just want you to know that I'm not planning on being violent in the workplace. I want to put it in writing. And he laughed and he was like, yeah, the system's bugging out. Just try it again. I was like, all right. So
Yeah.
fortunately, I can do that stuff from my low side computer from home. So I can bank a couple hours working from home doing that.
Yeah, we have a violence in the workplace training too. A few others. So
Yeah.
they're all from like the 80s. They're all
Really?
super old. Yeah. Yeah.
Ours, I think, are updated every year, which is nice.
That is nice.
And-
Ours have been the same since the
Yeah.
shuttle program.
Yeah. And I can do those online, the low side training stuff next week. for the few hours that I'm not traveling for, so I don't have to go in the office at all next week. I could just do that from home and then
Oh
travel.
yeah, you're traveling.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very nice. And then my other life update this week is Sammy came home after 3 weeks in Nepal and surrounding countries.
For one
She-
day, right?
What?
Came back for one day.
Yeah, she came back for one day. She climbed, she, I guess hiked, you could say climbed up to Everest Base Camp.
That's cool.
She did like this little aero glide trip through the mountains and they glide you. She did whitewater rafting. She went to a bunch of like different temples out there.
Yeah.
What else? She did a bungee jumping out there. A ton of different stuff. She sent me so many photos, but it looked like a ton of fun. Looked super cool. The
That's awesome.
views are gorgeous.
That's
like
awesome.
hiking up Everest, it was just like I was like, man, that is so sick. It was really cool.
Yeah.
I would love to go.
When I booked my flight, I picked an airline that doesn't fly Boeings. Unrelated, but
But yeah, it's
awesome.
It was really awesome to see her. Sadly, I had to work that evening, so I got home after
Oh,
she
what
got
the-
home. Yeah,
hey, that's a
yeah.
bummer. So
So
she left like 18 hours later.
I saw her for about 3 hours after I got home because
Damn.
we both had to go to bed.
Yeah.
So I saw her for about 3 hours, and then I saw her for about 15 seconds, half asleep in the morning before she left.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
That's a fast turnaround. So now where's
Yeah.
she going?
She's in Houston for her sister's wedding.
Gotcha.
Yeah, her sister's 27, 28.
Gotcha.
So her sister's getting married. So she's in Houston doing that until the 1st.
Mhm.
And then on the 1st, she's like, actually back. I'm
Yeah.
like, sweet.
Do you remember Riley Gilman? She's the girl that I run for
Yeah.
every once in a while. She
yeah.
just got married this past week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Everybody's getting married.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
So yeah, I saw her for a little bit. It was nice to see her.
Yeah.
Nice to catch up. She brought me this guy out in Nepal. He makes a bunch of different wood carvings,
Mhm.
and he does cars too.
Oh,
Like
that's cool.
hand wood carved cars.
Yeah.
And so she got me one of those.
Yeah.
And like the wheels roll and everything. I was like, man, this is like sick.
That's
I was like, I am not good enough at wood carving to make this. but
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
And so that was fun to see. And so yeah, it was good to see her. Came home, spent most of Thursday evening either at work or catching up with her. And then Monday I spent working on the car. So really the only day I had or days I had were Tuesday and Wednesday to do anything business related.
yeah.
So a little bit of a spottier update this week, but I know that for next week we'll have a bunch of stuff because we'll have 2 weekends worth of stuff. Because this
Yeah,
weekend
that's
and
true.
coming.
That's
so.
true.
But yeah, that's about what I got for life updates. What do you have for life this week?
This week, I moved the big Lego set that I built after my first sale into my office at work. I had to do it in 4 trips. That's how big it is. And the last one, I like plastic wrapped it, and then I put towels over it, and then I taped the towels, and I put it in a backpack. It looked like I was bringing a bomb in. It was. I was afraid walking in that someone would stop me because I'm not afraid of showing them what's in the bag, but just that I would have to unpack all of it in the lobby and then repack all of it to bring it into the office. But I made it in without a problem. So now that is on top of my desk as a waypoint. So hopefully people start being like, oh, dude, what the hell is over there? And then when I bring in the Yeti cooler, they'll be like, oh, dude. So
Yeah.
I'm really banking on this Yeti cooler bringing leads, I guess. I also at work booked my travel, which is 4 days next week. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say where I'm going. I mean, the plane tickets are on the low side, so I guess it's fine, but I'm just better safe than sorry.
Antarctica. Gonna go
Sure.
see the ice wall.
Sure. It's yeah, the edge of the earth. It's not in Florida. I can say that because I'm flying. But
Go
there's
to Orlando on a plane.
yeah, the fucking the rental cars there is just abysmal options, right? And so I'm considering getting
Going
a
to
car.
California.
Huh?
Are you going to California?
No way, Heath. There would be more options in California. This place sucks. But there's no fun cars. So my rental car is gonna be like a Camry or something. It's gonna suck. But I'm, considering getting a car on Turo to make the trip worth it. I found a Porsche for $800 for the days that I'm there. And I'm like,
All the days?
for all the
total?
days. Total.
Ah.
It's a 718. So it's a Cayman.
Okay, yeah.
But
There is a
then-
4-cylinder,
then it-
probably.
I don't know.
They had a turbo inline 4, and honestly, they get a lot of shit in the Porsche community, but I used to service one at Autobahn,
Mhm.
and the owner did like a mild tune on it, and he said that he's owned a bunch of Porsches, and he said he has the most fun in his 4-cylinder turbo 718.
Yeah.
And Alex drove it. I didn't drive it, but Alex drove it, and he was like 100% agree. This car is an absolute blast.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard good reviews of the 718.
Yeah. No, people love them.
Well, maybe I get it then. It's like it's $800, which is I don't get paid overtime or extra for travel at all. I'm just allowed to charge the time that it takes to sit on the plane, like the travel time. But I mean, that's a regular. I'm traveling within working hours, so I'm not earning any extra money on this trip. So it's like, do I want to spend $800 or not? But
they don't give you like a food budget or something.
They'll pay for your food, but
do they pay for it up front or on receipt basis?
No one can explain it to me.
Okay.
When Justin travels, he says that he eats like just McDonald's twice a day, and he saves like $150 over the course of his trips, which are similar lengths. So like maybe if I eat real cheap, I could
probably
offset
give you
some of
like
it.
some budget a day, like $75 or $100 a day. That's
I don't
what
know.
Jacobs does,
I don't
or
know.
Deck 4 does.
Yeah.
But what I did was instead of using that budget for food, I just saved the money.
Yeah. I don't know. I know it's not $800 total that they're giving me. That's for sure. So it's tough to warrant it. But at the same time, maybe I don't care and I just want to have fun. But we'll see. Oh, we get to wear our shoes this podcast, which I never wear these shoes because our feet are always out of frame. But I love wearing these shoes. I just wrote that down to mention it because I do love them.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, the thermostat in my car might be leaking. I'm not sure. I'm losing coolant pretty fast. Something's leaking. So that is probably going to be an upcoming life update, I'm certain, for both of us. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I wrote a quarterly review for one of my coworkers. When I'm requested to write quarterly reviews for other people at Northrop Grumman, you have a review with your manager every quarter, and at the end of every year is like the big one. So every 4 quarters, you get a big review, and usually you will request that the people you work with write a review for you for your manager to read over, and then those reviews help you get promotions, right? And so your manager will sit down with you and say, hey, listen, I've read through all your feedback. It's good or bad. Here's what you need to work on. And that's it. Sometimes you get sent a copy of the different synopses, right? But you never really know who they're from. And I always hate that because if I get feedback from someone who is not as hard of a worker as I am, then I don't care, right? So like if Frank gave me feedback on the SAE team about my work ethic, I wouldn't give a shit. If he gave me feedback about my leadership style, I would value it because I was leading that team. But it's all dependent on where it's from, right? Now, if Doug had given me feedback on my work ethic, then maybe it would mean more because he was our superior, right? So it's important to me to know who the feedback's from. And Northrop Grumman just doesn't do that. So I wrote feedback for this guy, and I emailed him and I was like, hey, dude, just wanted to let you know I got this request for feedback. I wrote it. I don't like the way Northrop Grumman does it. I want you to gauge my feedback based on how much you respect me and value my opinion. So here's the write-up. And I sent him the whole write-up. And he was really appreciative of it. And so I wanted to bring it up in case there's anybody else who does the same thing. And, people really appreciate it if you send it to them directly, right? And I didn't have many negative things in there. A lot of it were positives because she genuinely does do a good job. But even if it were negative or had holdbacks, I would still send it. And I have it in the past too. So I wanted to mention that. But that's it. That's my life update.
Very cool.
You ready to get into it?
Let's get into it.
Let's get into the car and then into the podcast.
Let's do it.
Today's episode is being recorded in the American Muscle Car Museum in Melbourne, Florida. It's a privately owned museum owned by Mark Pylock, an entrepreneur whose passion for motorsport has manifested in one of the most incredible car collections we've ever seen. Mark grew up in Massachusetts, just like you, and pursued a career in the pharmaceutical industry, not like you. He started his own business in the pet pharmaceutical industry, helping pets worldwide before using his resulting fortune to help Melbourne pets by founding the 3 Pylock dog parks in our area. His philanthropy extends beyond his dog parks, as the American Muscle Car Museum has not only served to share the love of motorsport with the community, but has also raised millions of dollars for local charities, hosted numerous free and county events, hosted thousands of utility workers and their equipment for FBL hurricane power recovery operations, and, most near and dear to our hearts, they've hosted our Florida Tech SAE team for more than one of our fundraisers, year on year, for I think 4 years.
Yeah, it was done for 4 years.
Yeah. The money from that event, year after year, has been the lifeblood of our racing team, and that generosity has continued today when Andrew and his team stepped in to help us in a time of need by lending our dream podcast studio in a time where we had nowhere else to go. Mark, Andrew, Ed, and the staff at the American Muscle Car Museum, I thank you.
Thank you.
Our first full segment today is going to be covering the Formula One Monaco Grand Prix. It's the race that just happened. All of today is going to be automotive content, given that we have the opportunity to record in the Muscle Car Museum, as mentioned. And we're going to start with that. Formula One has always been important to me. It's a huge part of my life now. I watch every race and every competitive session. But I didn't want to just start with the race, so I have some historical facts. I think you do too. For Monaco?
For Monaco?
Yeah.
I don't have historical facts. No.
Okay, awesome. Have
You mentioned that you were gonna run me through, and then I was just gonna give feedback.
That's
So
right. Yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff.
I got some other cool history stuff to talk about, but I don't have.
I read that and I wasn't sure if you had this or not. So okay, so the Monaco Grand Prix. Monaco is in Monte Carlo, right, which is like a tax haven for the wealthy because apparently there's like no income tax or something. I don't really know. I maybe should have researched that for this part of the podcast.
No tax.
In any case, the first race at Monaco was in 1929, which is almost 100 years ago now. And F1 has been racing there since their first season in 1950. And F1 hasn't raced at Monaco every year. For example, in 2020, it was canceled due to COVID. And I think 4 other years they didn't race at Monte Carlo too. But they've been racing at the Monaco Grand Prix almost every season for the entire history of Formula One. It's one of the most well-renowned circuits. We've got a poster of it in the background of most of our podcasts.
Yep.
Actually, we have 2 posters of it because one of it is Senna going around the swimming pool section, and then the other one is the track layout, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, the track layout is Monza, I believe.
No, the track layout's
Is
Monaco.
it? Maybe my Monza one's at home. I know I have a Monza one.
Got it. I'm pretty sure it's Monaco. Yeah.
Watch back the videos.
We'll double check. Yeah. I'm like 90% sure.
Yeah.
So some of the notable historical moments here. Ayrton Senna has the most wins with 6, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Graham Hill and Michael Schumacher are tied for second with 5 wins, also a lot. And only 48 drivers have won the Monaco Grand Prix. So they've raced there like 70 times, and there's only 48 drivers, meaning on average a driver wins it like 1.5 times or something like that, right? But that number goes way down when you consider that Senna has won 6 times and Michael and Graham Hill have won 5 times.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Wait, no, that's not true.
Well, the number of drivers
Doesn't correlate.
percentage.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the likelihood of someone new winning, right?
Got it. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the jewel in what is considered the racing triple crown between Monaco, the Indy 500, and Le Mans, the 24-hour Le Mans, which is ironic because now the Indy 500 happens on the same day as the Monaco Grand Prix. It didn't always be that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't always that way, but now it happens on the same day. And the only person to win the triple crown, do you know who this is?
I don't actually.
I mentioned him in one of the previous podcasts. It was in my life update when I was mentioning fun things I learned.
I can't remember.
Graham Hill, who won Monaco 5 times in the 1960s, and the Indy 500.
I was gonna guess Graham Hill, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Monaco
sense.
5 times in the 1960s. He won the Indy 500 in 1966, and then won Le Mans in 1972.
Got it.
And-
I was familiar with the Triple Crown as on the endurance side as the Sebring 12, the Daytona 24, and the Le Mans 24.
Yeah.
And no one has won that
Mhm.
those 3 combos. But Ken Miles in the 60s racing for Ford,
Right.
he'd won Sebring and Daytona, and he was winning Le Mans. Now, Ford said, "Hey, we want to get a shot of the cars going across the line together."
Mhm.
And they're like, "Miles, you're already ahead. Like, you'll win it. Blah blah blah." And Ford was like, "Get in line with your teammates." And so that's that famous photo of the Ford GTs going across the line together.
Right.
Now, Ford did that out of they knew the back end of it. Shelby didn't know, but Ford, the corporation, I think it was his name started with an L.
I'm not gonna know it.
Yeah, but anyways,
Leslie, make it up.
yeah, something like that. But he was like, I want this photo. I want this photo. And Shelby was like, I don't know. And he was like, no, we want this photo for Ford.
Right.
And so they got on the line and they all crossed the line together. And there was a technicality in the rules that it was something about like slowing down for a lap or blah, blah, blah would result in your order being determined for finish based on what position you are along pit road. It was some technicality like that. And Shelby didn't know about the technicality. Ken Miles didn't know about the technicality. And Ken Miles was like miles ahead of this guy. And this happened within the last like 30 minutes or an hour of the race.
So he slowed way down to let
He
this
slowed
guy
way
catch.
down to catch up so that they could get the photo together.
Yeah.
And that is the reason why Ken Miles did not win the Le Mans 24.
Was he knocked down to second?
He was knocked down to second.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
because of that small technicality that Ford knew about. And Ken Miles and Ford had beef because of like past history and stuff. There's a bunch of history on it that I don't have outlined here, but
Yeah.
it's really interesting. But he would have been the only person to win those 3 endurance events in
That's
1 year.
crazy.
And
In 1
he
year.
lost it in 1 year.
Got it.
And he lost it by a technicality because essentially Ford duped him and they're like, screw you, we want to screw you on
Yeah.
this because we don't like you.
Yeah.
And we're gonna set up this photo because we want this photo, but it's also gonna screw you over.
Yeah.
And Enzo Ferrari kind of tipped his hat a little bit to Ken Miles towards the end there. And there was some level of respect between Enzo Ferrari and Ken Miles because like everyone knew
Pure.
Ken Miles
Right.
like kind of won all 3. And then he got
Yeah.
duped by, essentially, the corporate entity wanting something different to happen.
Well, what's tricky about that is he led the race and
Yeah.
crossed the line in first, right? And
Yeah.
then was given a penalty after the race.
Right.
And so it's like, well, it's kind of like Senna's win in Japan.
But it was only a
1989.
penalty as a result of him doing it as was requested by Ford Motor Company. It wasn't
Exactly.
due to his own driving.
Right. And
Yeah.
the penalty was it was outside of an actual sporting violation. It was
Yeah.
more of like an ethics.
It wasn't like
compliance
cutting
issue.
a corner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't cheat to gain an advantage. Actually, he did the opposite.
Yeah. He was
So
complacent. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. In my books, he won all 3.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah. That's how I see it too. But
I growing up,
Yeah.
so this is the triple crown of motorsport in general.
okay.
The Monaco, IndyCar, and Le Mans.
Mm.
And when I was growing up, I was like, oh, dude, like I wonder, like, how are you going to win all 3 in 1 year? That's crazy. And when Fernando Alonso left McLaren F1 I think he left in 2016, he went to IndyCar to try to win the Indy 500 because he had already won at Monaco. He has plans to race at Le Mans, or maybe he's already won there. I don't know. He tried to win in an IndyCar. Didn't work out for him. Bad car that year. But the only person to win all 3 is Graham Hill, and that was over the course of like a decade.
Yeah.
Or I guess 5 years if he did it between 66 and 72. But yeah, the reason that I brought Graham Hill up in one of the previous episodes is because he was a rower.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fun fact.
Yeah.
So some specific historical moments from Formula One at Monaco. I've got a few of them detailed here because it's just such an incredible track. In 1955, so the 5th F1 race at Monaco, Alberto Ascari put his car in the harbor. As he was coming through, he was a 2-time world champion at the time. He lost control of the chicane coming out of the tunnel and launched his car into the harbor. And he got out of his car and he was rescued by a nearby boat. And I have written here, I don't know if this is true or not because ChatGPT said it, but 4 days later it says he died in a testing accident at Monza. And I know he died.
I mean, I would.
I know he died in a testing accident at Monza. I just don't know if it's 2 days later or 4 days later.
Yeah.
But crazy that it's almost like the story of the guy who survived a plane crash and then choked on a sandwich and died. Right? It's like you survive crashing your car into the harbor and then you die at Monza.
Actually, the year after Ken Miles almost won that endurance triple crown, the following spring he was testing the new GT40 Mark IV and he died in a testing accident.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what the craziest part about that story is? The going in the harbor. It's not the first time it happened. Because it's not the only time it happened.
Yeah.
In 1965, Paul Hawkins put his car in the harbor too. And I don't know what safety precautions they've done to change that, to stop that from happening, but maybe that's why they added the Neuville chicane. I'm not sure when that was added. I should have looked that up too.
I don't know.
Because that's coming out of the tunnel. They put that chicane.
Yeah, I know they put that. Well, Le Mans used to be a straight shot on the back end too.
Yeah.
Those 2 chicanes that they have now, those didn't always used to be there. That's why you got 235 mile an hour speeds down that back straight. It's because it was all just a straight shot.
Yeah, exactly.
You know. Just crazy to think about in the like 60s.
Dude,
Going 230 and
Yeah.
you don't know if your brakes are going to work when you get to the end of that. Like
230.
that's the reality of those cars.
Yeah, 230. You don't know if your brakes are going to work. No one's really figured out downforce yet. So,
Yeah.
so that's like up in the air,
It's
right?
like, it looks good.
Well,
It's
and the
a bunch
tires-
of guys with cigarettes and they're like,
Yeah.
on with it.
And the tires at that time are so skinny. Like the level of grip that you have
and it just,
available is like ridiculous.
Any of the technology, it's just like,
Yeah.
just you got to be a different breed of person
Yeah.
to run that.
And those cars, I love everything about them. I would love the chance to drive one. I don't know if I have any level of confidence to drive them that quickly. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'd take this car 230 down the Mulsanne Straight any day, right? I don't know about one of those. The GT40s in the back room.
Yeah.
We should put some of the we should take B-roll footage or something like walking
Yeah, I'm gonna
around.
throw it in.
Yeah, we can do like a little voiceover. Anyways, so that's my first historical moment. My second historical moment is Ayrton Senna's debut performance in the Toleman in 1984. It's not his first race in Formula One or the Toleman, but it's like his breakout race where he did well because the Toleman was a midfield car, right? They were a small, underfunded, very slow team that year. He qualified 13th in qualifying. And in Monaco, even back then, passing isn't exactly easy. So qualifying 13th means you can maybe make it up to the points, like the top 6, top 8. But when the race started, it was heavily raining. And you know this race by now.
Yeah.
But Senna got going in 13th, and by lap 31 of 76, he had passed everybody but Prost, who was in the lead in the McLaren, and he was closing in on Prost crazy fast. Still raining, still wet, and gaining seconds a lap, right? And Prost got on the radio and was like, "Hey, we have to really red flag this race because it's dangerous, right?" At this point, everyone's making it around the track okay. I think there had been a couple crashes at this point, but it's Monaco, right?
Yeah.
No one's like in crazy danger, and Senna's just like putting in the laps, right? And so on lap 31 of 76, they threw the red flag and stopped the race, and Senna got second. But it's not a question that if the race had gone on, he would have won that race for Toleman, which would have been it was a crazy race anyways, but it would have been like
he showed
really
a
monumental.
lot of potential.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so then it's no surprise, years later, he would go to McLaren, sign with them, and out-qualified Prost in 1988 by 1.4 seconds.
That's ridiculous.
Anything these days, qualifying anything over like 0.2 of a second is like a big gap.
Yeah.
So 1.4 seconds is incredible. And then he went on to win it 6 times. 5 of them were consecutively from 1989 to 1993, which is absolutely crazy. So, he died in 1994, so he died 31 years ago. And still, people go to Monaco. It's the first thing you think about, right? Last year, McLaren ran tribute liveries on their cars and race suits to Senna. Yeah. Incredible track, incredible driver. So those are my first 2. My next one's a little more recent. This is about Daniel Ricciardo's legacy at Monaco. So Daniel Ricciardo drove for Red Bull in the 2010s. And he was the star driver that replaced Sebastian Vettel. Well, he didn't replace him. He drove with Sebastian Vettel and started to outperform him because when the turbo hybrid era started, all of the grip in the rear, they got a lot more grip in the rear. It was less of a pointy car. And Sebastian Vettel couldn't drive that. Daniel Ricciardo could. And so Daniel Ricciardo started to outperform Sebastian Vettel. I might have that backwards. They might have less grip in the rear. I'm not sure. The aero balance changed of the cars. Vettel had a harder time driving the cars. The Red Bull wasn't as fast as the McLaren or Ferraris anymore because he had just gotten 4 wins back to back. Daniel Ricciardo comes in and starts beating Vettel, right? So we get to 2016. By this point, it's Ricciardo and Max, and Lewis Hamilton is winning pretty much everything, right? 2016 is when Nico Rosberg mounts his challenge against Lewis at Mercedes, right? So Lewis and Nico are going head to head in this like fierce title battle the whole season, right? Actually, that season, Daniel Ricciardo is the only person to get a pole position apart from Nico or Lewis that whole season, and it's at Monaco. Every other pole position, Nico or Lewis, Nico or Lewis, Nico or Lewis, right? And so Daniel secures pole position in 2016. 21 races in that season. The only one that it's not a Mercedes driver. And it's in Monaco, so it's pretty much a guaranteed win, right? If it doesn't rain, pretty much a guaranteed win, because by this point, the cars are so big you can't pass.
Yeah.
Daniel dominates the first half of the race and builds a 13-second gap to Lewis in second, right? Comes in for the pits, stops on his marks. He gets jacked up in the air. The wheelman pulled the wheels off, and then nothing happens because Red Bull had miscommunicated with the mechanics and they had gotten the wrong tires out. So they had to bring the tires back in the garage, go get the correct tires, and then bring them out. So his pit stop, he had a 13-second gap to Lewis. There's a 13-second delay getting the tires back on the car. He came out right behind Lewis and finished second, right? Absolute heartbreak, right? Daniel loves his circuit. He's like the king of the straight tracks, right? And Mercedes was winning everything else that year, so everyone was really sad, right? 2017, the next year, the Ferraris of Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen finished 1-2. They absolutely crushed the field. Daniel beats Max Verstappen in his first full season with Red Bull by 32 points. But Daniel only wins one race compared to Max's 2. So starting to get overshadowed a little bit. Yeah, Max is kind of crash happy, but he's got a lot of talent. Is Daniel the guy to be the championship leader? Should Red Bull get a championship winning car? Who knows? There's a little bit of doubt being cast, right? It's at this point that it's rumored that Daniel Ricciardo might not be at Red Bull next year, right? In 2018, he stays with Red Bull, right?
Yeah.
They go back to Monaco. He puts his car back on pole. And he starts the race strong. Sebastian Vettel's in second. He's holding his lead against Vettel. Vettel pits on lap 16 to try to undercut him and puts on the super soft tires. And Ricciardo pits one lap later on lap 17 to cover him off. And in the pit stops, he stops on his marks. He gets jacked in the air. The wheels come off. And the super softs go on without a problem. And he leaves the pits, stays in the lead, right? And then on lap 28, 10 laps later, he starts losing power. And it turns out that there's a failure in the MGUK, which is the motor generated unit kinetic. It's a fucking stupid name. TLDR, it's the electrical power of the car, right? So he loses 25% of his available power, which is a big deal on the straights in any race, but especially in Monaco, right? And so for 50 laps, Daniel Ricciardo holds off Sebastian Vettel, and he takes the win that he missed out on in 2016. And this is the race with the famous swimming pool photo where he's jumping into.
And he also, if I recall correctly, was fastest in all free practice sessions and qualifying as well. And so it was a full sweep of that weekend, all free practice, qualifying, and racing.
Yep. They call if you win from pole, if you win 3 races in a row, it's a hat trick, or maybe I'm misremembering this. Maybe it's this. If you lead in every qualifying session and get pole and win the race, or maybe it's just pole and win the race. It's called a grand slam. And if you lead every practice session, every qualifying session, and win the race, it's a grand chelem. And so this was a grand chelem. Maybe I'm making that up. I don't know. But you're right.
Close enough.
You're right. He won everything that weekend, right? Absolutely crushed it. And then the next year he went to Renault and his career died. But moving on swiftly, the next story I have is on Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc has been victim of what most people have been referring to as the Monaco curse for the past 7 years. So here's a little bit of background on Charles, because this is, I think, probably my favorite Monaco story at the racetrack, maybe even more than Senna's stories. So Charles Leclerc was born and raised in Monaco. So every year they go to Monte Carlo. It's his home race. His father was a Formula 3 driver, and Charles grew up racing with his brother Arthur and his godfather Jules Bianchi. And his father owned a racetrack that Leclerc grew up racing on, and he started karting at the age of 5. And between the years of 2005 and 2013, he won multiple karting championships before moving to Formula Renault in 2014, where he finished second in his rookie year. 2014 is also the year that Jules Bianchi, Charles' godfather, driving in a Formula 1 car, crashes and dies at the Japanese Grand Prix, which is inspiring the halo devices on the modern Formula 1 cars, right?
Yeah.
If I recall, the weather was really bad that race, and they had pulled out a street sweeper to blow some of the water off the grid, but the cars were still going around the track. Jules couldn't see because of the spray, ran right into the back of the tractor and died immediately.
I believe the tractor was recovering. No, he didn't. I believe the tractor was recovering someone else that had crashed.
Yeah.
And Jules also went off on the same corner, hit the tractor, and he was in a medically induced coma for about 9 months and then passed away.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So big hit to Charles in that year.
Yeah.
And the next year, he's promoted to Formula 3, where he wins multiple races and finishes 4th in the championship. So he had won 2nd in Formula Renault and now 4th in Formula 3. So in 2016, he moves to GP3, which is kind of like not quite a Formula 2. It's still a junior Formula category, but it's getting closer to Formula 1. And he wins that championship. So then in 2017, he moves to Formula 2, winning the championship in his rookie year. And it's the most dominant F2 win to date. And he's one of only 4 drivers who has won the F3 and F2 championships back-to-back in their rookie years.
Oh, got it.
The other 3 actually are George Russell, Oscar Piastri, and Gabriel Bortoleto, all of which are driving for Formula 1 right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so fucking absolutely crushing it in the junior series. And in 2017, Charles's father falls ill. And on his deathbed, Charles tells him that he had fulfilled their shared lifelong goal of signing a Formula 1 contract with Ferrari. So it's a bit of a fib, but he didn't want his father to die questioning if all the work that he had put in had paid off. And so in 2018, Charles signs with Sauber in F1 and does move to F1. And in 2019, he resolves the lie and kind of promise to his father and himself and signs with Ferrari to drive in Formula 1. And at this point in 2019, he's driving with Sebastian Vettel and impresses immediately. He wins a race in his rookie, or 2 races in his rookie year, Spa and Monza, I think. And everyone's like, oh my God, dude, he came in and is beating Sebastian Vettel in his rookie season with Ferrari, not rookie season in Formula 1, I guess. But he's looking like a future world champion, right? But he just can't seem to win Monaco. In 2018, he retired due to brake failure. In 2019, Ferrari's strategy qualified him 15th. So he was out. They didn't send him out on a second lap, missed out. And then in the race, he got a puncture and retired. So retirement from 15th. In 2020, the race was canceled due to COVID. 2021, he takes pole position, but he crashes in qualifying. And if he has to replace components on the car, he gets a grid penalty. But the car is just good enough that it passes inspection and he can probably race with it, right? And so they don't repair the car. He goes out on the formation lap and gets a gearbox issue on the formation lap, has to retire before the race even starts. 2022, he takes pole position again, and Ferrari's strategy in the race drops him to 4th. They fumbled the double stack and told Leclerc to stay out after he was already in the pit lane. In 2022 is the closest he's come to a title fight. That's when Leclerc and Max were going head-to-head. And Max ultimately ended up winning out and pretty much everything that season. So now we get to 2023, where he qualifies 3rd, gets a 3-place grid penalty for impeding someone else in qualifying, and finishes 6th. So people are like, dude, Charles is so talented. He's in a Ferrari, which is no slouch of a car. It's his home Grand Prix. Why can't he win here? It must be a curse, right? And in 2024, last year, he qualifies 1st with Oscar Piastri right behind him. And this is after the Miami Grand Prix, where McLaren brought upgrades and were stupid fast. And so they get to the race. Charles puts it on pole. They start the race. Oscar can't make a move in turn 1, but Sergio Perez and Kevin Magnussen put it in the wall on lap 1 and blow the cars into a million pieces. So there's a red flag immediately, right? Everybody pits, everybody puts on new tires, and they go back out again. So now, effectively, they don't have to make another pit stop. They can just run to the end of the race. So there's no opportunity for Ferrari to fuck up the strategy. So it's just, can the car hold it together? And can Charles have enough pace to hold off Oscar Piastri? Because the McLaren is really fast at this point. But it's Monaco, so he wins. This year, he got 2nd. He qualified 2nd, finished 2nd, but the Ferrari's like nowhere near that place. But that win was so special to everybody last year.
Yeah.
And then my last historical moment that is historical to me and myself is Max Verstappen's qualifying lap in 2023.
Yeah.
Because
that was sick.
Max was winning everything this season. Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin were doing quite well. They had podiumed a couple times. And Alonso was like right on top of Max's time through all of qualifying. And in Q3 on the last run, Alonso takes pole from Max by like a 10th. And Max is still on his qualifying lap. But he's 3/10 down going into the last section. And the last section is pretty much just like the last corner out of the swimming pool section and then Rascasse. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And that last section, I think, is probably the greatest like 25 seconds of driving I've seen in my entire
Less
life.
than that even. It's like
Yeah.
15 seconds.
He built
Yeah.
back 0.3 of a second in the final sector.
Yeah.
And he took pole.
That is a very cool sector to watch.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's my favorite piece of racing content I've seen in my entire life. It's absolutely incredible. And that is my personal favorite moment
Cool.
at Monza. I'm sorry, at Monaco. So now getting on to the race this year, because it just happened. So now we've got the prelude into it. We're going to talk about it this year. The race was a little bit different this year. Qualifying is exactly the same, and it went about as expected. Usually the fastest cars get pole at Monaco unless someone puts it into a wall, right? So in Q1, Kimi Antonelli clips the wall at the same corner that Alberto Ascari put it in the harbor. Kimi does not go in the harbor, but he ends Q1, and although his time is good enough to make it into Q2, he can't race. He can't qualify because his car's broken.
Mhm.
And in Q2, George Russell, the other Mercedes driver, his car breaks down in the tunnel. So he also can't qualify any higher. So Mercedes start 14th and 15th. And they go on in the race to have the worst race that Mercedes has ever had at Monaco. I think worse than Michael and Nico, I think, did really poorly at Mercedes when Michael came back from retirement to race for Mercedes. And this, I think, was worse than that. Both of the Racing Bulls beat Yuki Tsunoda into Q3. So Yuki Tsunoda now racing with the Red Bull. Can't quite cut it. Fernando Alonso makes it into Q3, which is a big deal because although he was in contention for pole in 2023, they're back to the bottom of the pecking order. Fernando Alonso has had the worst start to his entire F1 career this year, has not scored a point yet.
Wow.
So he makes it into Q3. Lance Stroll is in 19th and has a 3-place grid penalty for impeding. And Oliver Behrman is starting from the pit lane. So Lance Stroll starts 19th with a 3-place grid penalty, making it 19th. The first runs in Q1 put Leclerc on provisional pole, and everybody loses their shit because it'd be awesome to see him win twice in a row. Lewis is running well in the top 3, showing that the Ferrari actually has pace, which is new because they haven't had pace all year. Max Verstappen puts in a solid first-run banker lap. It's not quite good enough for pole, but he does a good job. And McLaren start their second runs early, which is interesting because in Monaco, the track evolution is usually pretty significant. So usually it's the last person going around the track has the best chance of setting a pole lap, like Max Verstappen in 2023. But you run the risk of, if someone puts it in a wall, like Charles did in 2021, before the end of the session, your fast run might not count. You might not be able to get to the end of the track. McLaren sends their drivers out way early for a second run. And everyone's like, what are they doing? They're going to miss out on pole. You know, if you're not getting on pole in Monaco, then you might as well qualify 10th because, like, who cares at that point, right? So they go out, they do their fast runs, and it's not enough to beat Charles Leclerc. Charles keeps it on pole. Or maybe that's not true. Maybe they do get it on pole. I can't remember. They go out and do their first runs. Not overly impressive, right? And everyone's like, wow, that's it for McLaren. Okay. Charles goes around again, gets pole. Max goes around again, can't quite beat his time. The McLarens are going around again, but they've already done their lap on the soft tires, right? So the softs are only good for one lap, right? You go out, you do a warm-up lap, you do your hot lap, and then you take it into the pits, right? Cool down lap into the pits. But McLaren are so good on their tires this year, on tire degradation, they do an entire warm-up lap, an entire quali lap, an entire cool-down lap, an entire warm-up lap again, and then a last quali lap, and Lando Norris puts it on pole.
Wow.
Which just shows how incredible McLaren are on their tires. And dude, holy shit. Max said it a few weeks ago. Someone was like, you know, oh, if you had the McLaren this year, like, what would happen? We've already seen it. If Max had the McLaren this year, he would win 19 out of 21 races like he did in 2023. So Leclerc's not on pole, which is sad to see. The actual race was a little bit more interesting this year because they made it mandatory that every team take 2 pit stops. And that's because the only strategy that happens in Monaco is if you're pitting. And the only pit stop last year happened on lap 1 when Sergio Perez put it in the wall. And they were like, oh, I don't want that happening again. So they made it a mandatory 2 pit race, right? So we start off lap 1, turn 1. Lando Norris locks up all 4 wheels and almost puts it into the wall, which Lando has a terrible track record of losing the lead off the start. And that's pretty much it. That's all the action. The mandatory 2-stop did not work. The teams that had 2 drivers still in the race had their rear gunner slow way down to build a gap for the person in front to pit into. So everybody pretty much maintained position. The top 4 were separated from Hamilton by like 45 seconds by the end of the race. And the only saving grace is that everybody did their 2 pit stops. Max had only pitted once, and he was in the lead for the last like half of the race, right? And Max slowed way down to back Lando and Charles into each other, and then a 45-second gap to Hamilton in 4th, right? Or no, it was Max, Lando, Leclerc, Oscar, and then a big gap to 5th, Hamilton, right? So the gap was for Max to pit into 4th, right?
Okay.
But he backed them up, hoping that Leclerc would put some pressure under Lando. Maybe Leclerc could pass Lando because Lando's a bigger threat in the championship. Maybe there'd be a red flag or a safety car, and he could get a free pit stop and move up a position or even win. And nothing ended up happening. No one put it in the wall. There's no problem. No safety car. So Max pits, finishes in 4th. That's the end of the race. So not overly entertaining this year.
Yeah. But
Didn't
some
really-
cool history.
Yeah, great history, right? There's a lot of talk right now with how bad the 2 stops were about whether or not they should keep the track on the calendar. As you might be able to tell from all the history that I have written out here, I really like this track.
Mhm.
I think that the problem isn't with the track. It's not with the mandatory strategy. I think it's just with the size of the cars.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
George Russell was joking that they could install sprinklers into the race and everybody gets to turn the sprinklers on once and each driver gets to pick when it happens. That's funny. All of the wet weather races are entertaining at Monaco. But I think ultimately what it is it's just the cars are too big, right? Wheelbase is really long. It makes those corners like, really
They're too
challenging to
fat.
pass. They're too wide.
Yeah.
They're very heavy. Yeah. So ultimately I think the solution is just to get rid of the hybrid system. Go back to shorter wheelbase cars. Next year, the regulations are changing and they are getting shorter wheelbases.
Oh, cool.
It's not by a whole lot. It's maybe by like a quarter a wheel or something like that.
A
But
quarter of an inch or
quarter of a wheel. So I don't know, like maybe
Oh,
like 4 inches.
2 inches.
Yeah. It's not a ton, but it's something,
Yeah.
right? It's trending in the right direction. Unfortunately, they're, dogging the power on the internal combustion engines and increasing the power of the electrical hybrid. And they're adding weird active aero. It's going to suck. I'm pretty sure it's going to suck. I should be less
Womp
negative,
womp.
but I'm not excited about it. But
Yeah.
in my opinion, I think they should keep the race.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool. I think the cars have just gotten a little bit too complacent in
Yeah.
there, and I think the regulations have gone a little bit too far in terms of like, Formula One has always kind of been a staple of engineering.
Yeah.
And so I understand where they're coming from with the hybrid stuff, but at the end of the day, it also is like a world-class race
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
And so I think that fundamentally, yes, it is a showcase of technology and engineering, but it also is a showcase of racing.
Yeah.
And to have a bunch of cars that are really wide and heavier and like have these complex hybrid systems and all of these like assist mechanisms and technology, I think really can quickly detract from the quality of the experience and the quality of the racing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that an interesting trend that I've noticed is everybody knows that Formula One technology is cutting edge. It starts with Formula One and then it moves to the production cars.
Yeah.
So ultimately, like actually this car behind us, man, I can't remember what component it is. Comes straight from an F1 car. The technology does. Maybe it's the gearbox.
It's probably the gearbox.
I
That's
think
what
it's
was
the dual
gonna
clutch
say.
gearbox. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ferrari commonly, once they started going to their like paddle shift gearboxes, a
Yeah.
lot of those were pulled from F1 or F1 like technology.
Yeah. So like great example of how awesome F1 technology finds its way into production vehicles,
Yeah.
right? I think the issue is F1 as an organization realized that everything that happens in F1 is incredible and then makes its way into production cars. And so for the good of the world, they should start developing hybrid technology that will then find its way back into production
Yeah.
cars, right? The issue is that all of the developments that we're used to seeing from Formula One, they are developed to make the cars faster and more efficient. If you didn't
Yeah.
have, like, if you said to these Formula One teams, hey, build whatever race car you want, you can put a hybrid system in, no one would do it. They wouldn't add it because it genuinely doesn't add to the cars, right? And so it's almost like if Formula One recognized that Formula One develops cutting edge technology, but misunderstood the assignment. They don't develop the technology to make cars better. They develop the technology to make the cars faster, right? And so by forcing them to, eat their peas and carrots and like develop these hybrid systems, they're gonna do it because they want their cars to go as fast as possible, but it's not in the true spirit of the sport,
Yeah,
right?
I would agree. Yeah.
It's like when they used to say like, hey, you can do naturally aspirated or forced induction, but if you do forced induction, we're gonna limit your displacement.
Right.
They're giving them the option. So they should say, hey, you can do hybrid system, but if you don't do hybrid system, you have to like add weight ballast to the car because the electric cars are going to be heavier. That would be awesome. I'd love to see a mixed grid of like hybrid versus non-hybrid with weight balance. And when no one builds a hybrid balanced car, they'll realize that it's silly and then they'll just take the weight ballast out and then we're back to real racing, right?
Yeah, MotoGP did that one year. I think it was '06. They did a similar thing where you could either have a 2-stroke 500cc motor or a 950cc 4-stroke engine. And so you could either go 4-stroke,
Right.
bigger, or 2-stroke smaller. And that was some of the best racing. It
Right.
was a ton of fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look back at the 70s and 80s when they had
Oh,
the
yeah.
mix of forced induction, right? Same deal. So why don't we do that with the hybrid engine? It's because they're trying to push development and
Yeah,
push that narrative.
of course.
But our saving grace is that Sebastian Vettel retired from Formula One and went and developed sustainable fuels so that we can bring back real racing and V10s without being uneconomical, which is just so hilarious to me. It's so funny that they want to do these hybrid cars to like save on gasoline and like not contribute to the environment.
Yeah.
There's this crazy stat I saw a while ago, which is that if you account for all of the fuel that's burned from every Formula One car, all 20 cars across F1 or FP1, practice 2, practice 3, quali 1, quali 2, quali 3, and the race, all 20 cars, all of those sessions, still less of an economic impact than one jet moving team equipment from one race to the next.
Yeah.
And
What is it?
each team takes multiple jets. There's 20 teams. There's 22 races in a year. So like, what are we doing with the cars? Why are we doing this? Right?
Yeah.
Make more sustainable planes or change your calendar so you don't fly halfway across the globe 6 times in a season. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In any case, this is our segment on Monaco.
Yes. Yeah. I do have if you want to move into it, I have a quick rally
Yeah, let's do it.
segment.
Yeah.
So this past week was the WRC at Portugal.
Yeah.
I did not watch it. I did not watch the highlights. I have no idea how it went, but I do have some cool WRC history that I
Sure.
wanted to drop.
Sure.
Just a brief little 5-minute segment, but the championship season I wanted to discuss a little bit was the 1983 World Rally Championship.
Is this Group B?
I believe so. That's actually a great question.
Got it.
But yeah,
Is this the Quattro?
yeah.
That's Group B.
This was Group B. But so the preface to this is Audi. This is a largely was a battle between Audi and Lancia,
Mm-hmm.
or Lancia, however you want to say it. But Audi in '79 had developed a 4-wheel drive system for their SUV production vehicles.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, I wonder if this would work well for rallying.
Mhm.
Because they took out one of their Quattros, which they developed at this time just as a production vehicle, and they were like, hey, this is really good on dirt. I wonder if this would work well in rally. The problem is that 4-wheel drive or all wheels being driven, specifically in the rule book, was outlawed in WRC.
Mm.
And so Audi was like, well, shit, we can't quite do it. But what they did was they went to the conference in '79 between all of the governing body, and they all had dinner together and whatever. And then the last minute, Audi was like, hey, like just real quick before we dismiss this rule about like 4-wheel drive stuff, can we just make this go away? And they're like, oh yeah, no one's gonna want to put their tractor systems in rally cars, yeah, whatever. And so that rule went away. And so in '82, Audi came out with the Quattro, and they absolutely dominated that season. They did super, super well. And so coming into the following year, all of the teams panicked. They're like, oh my God, we need 4-wheel drive systems. Like, this is the new way. Like, we are getting slaughtered by Audi because it was good on every surface.
Yeah.
And Lancia was like, we're just going to build what we know. We're going to run with it. And so Audi, for a little bit of background, was backed by VW Engineering. They were, yeah, we can't see it in the frame, but there's a 23 window VW bus
It's a
behind.
great opportunity to do a voiceover video walkthrough of the VW bus.
Yes. If we have production time, we will do so.
Audio
If not,
listeners,
please check out the American Muscle Car Museum for great photos of all these cars.
enjoy the voiceover of the bus. It's Sanders' favorite vehicle in this whole museum. Okay, VW backs Audi in 1982.
Yes, in 1982, and beyond as well, 83, etc. And so Audi was a very German-style team. Their team boss was named Roland Gumpert. He was a engineer, and he was very stringent, very German guy. And then the drivers were Hannu Mikkola, Michel Mouton, and Stig Blomqvist.
Stig?
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually a relation to Stig Top Gear Stig. I forgot to look into that, but
I don't know why they call him Stig.
I don't know. It might be because of this. Because this is
Good
Jeremy
thought.
Clarkson's favorite battle. So it
Interesting.
might be a reference to this. I'm not sure, but it could be something to look into. But between those three people, they had 21 rally wins under their belt.
That's crazy.
The Audi Quattro was four-wheel drive, a turbo 5-cylinder with 370 horsepower and weighed 2,400 pounds.
Dude, I would never guess watching that car drive that it has 370 horsepower. That thing looks like it's got like
Yeah, I think
600.
I'm hesitant to say whether this was technically Group B.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure because I know Group B.
Group B
I
was
think
in the 80s.
It was, but I think it was formed just after this.
Oh, so this might be Group A?
I'm not sure. I should have looked
I'll
it
look
up.
it up real quick.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
please look it
certain
up.
that the Quattro...
83 rallies. I know the Quattro raced in Group B, but I know the
Yeah.
Quattro came out
I think the
earlier
Quattro...
as well.
I think the Quattro was born into Group B.
We'll look it up. We're looking it up right now because I should have.
What years was Group B? 1982 to 1986.
Okay, so this would be Group B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
so
very
83.
beginning of Group B, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is early stage of Group B. I should have looked
So
it up before.
actually,
But
I'm
oh, well.
wondering if... So their meeting was in 1979, you said, in which they
Yeah,
made the four-wheel drive vault.
for the 1980 season.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So four-wheel drive was enabled in 1980, but they came out with the Quattro in 82.
Yeah, no one
Got it.
else looked into that rule or cared to change anything because there was no
Right.
incentive to.
Right.
And Lancia was a very Italian team in contrast. Their team boss was named Cesare Fiorio, and he liked girls and powerboat racing. So that's what he
Yeah.
liked. And their
I
drivers
might be Italian.
their drivers were Marco Allen, Attilio Bettega, and Walter Roll. So those were the drivers. And Walter Roll, which was kind of their flagship driver, he was actually German.
Not
Italian. Yeah, not Italian. He didn't want to compete in every race, and he didn't want to be world champion because he just wanted to stay a normal guy. He wanted to race 5 of the 6 races out of the season that he liked, and then just kind of chill for the remainder of it. He just wanted to passively kind of just like, I just want to race the ones I like.
That's wild.
Yeah. And so they hired him on anyway. He was team driver for 83. And the funny backstory is Lancia, they might have been a little bit primitive in their approach and a little bit Italian in their ways, but they had a few tricks up their sleeve, which I'm going to go through throughout the different races. But one of them was they needed 400 production cars in order to race the Lancia as the rally car, because they needed some production car essentially to resemble what was being raced.
Right.
And they needed 400 specifically. Now, Lancia, what they did was they built 200. And they built 200 and put them in one parking lot. And then they had a bunch of inspectors go around, and all the inspectors said, yeah, these look great. And then Lancia was like, oh, yeah, the other 200 are in another parking lot. But before we go there, let's have lunch. And so they'd have a nice long lunch and a few drinks, and they'd chat for a few hours while the 200 cars from the first lot were moved to a different lot. And by the time they got there, all 200 other cars were in this other lot. And they all checked out, and that's how they got their 400.
I remember this story. I thought it was with Porsches for some reason, but must have been Lancia.
The 917s had a similar deal where they had to make 25, I believe. But the story on those is more so like some of the cars didn't have the right motor. Some of the cars had tractor transmissions. Some of the cars weren't fully assembled underneath.
Gotcha.
It was a lot more like that kind of
No,
thing.
the parking lot swap is what I was thinking of. So I must be misremembering.
Yeah, the
but
parking lot
that's-
swap, at least how I know it, is
Yeah.
the
That's one of my
Lancia-
favorites. Yeah.
Lancia deal.
And these are the 037s. Yeah.
The 037s, yeah. And the
Those are some of my favorite racing cars
that's
of all time.
super cool. Super
Dude, I had I played Forza Horizon on Xbox growing up,
Yeah.
and anything off-road or mixed surface, I go straight to the 037. I like the Stratos too, but
Yeah.
dude,
It was very cool cars.
Yeah.
But a couple of the other things that Lancia supposedly did, there's no proof of this, but they were all about cut and weight. And so they made, or supposedly the story goes is that they made cardboard roll cages that they then painted to look like metal.
That's insane.
Yeah, and so if you look at crash photos of O37s, it doesn't look like the roll cage does much of anything.
That's wild.
And so they had a couple of tricks up their sleeve. The Lancia was incredibly fragile. And it was a rear-wheel drive supercharged inline four, making 320 horsepower and weighed 2,100.
Could you imagine being the driver and your engineers say, "We've got an ace in our pocket, a trick up our sleeve.
Yeah.
We're going to beat the competition." And
Well,
then you go,
Walter
"What's
Roll
the
knew
trick?"
about it.
Huh?
Walter Roll, their flagship driver, he knew about it.
But could you imagine being the driver and having them say, like, "We have a competitive advantage," and then
Yeah, that being the
you'll
competitive
probably
advantage.
die. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Walter Roll talks about how his family and friends were like, "Oh, why are you gonna go race the O37? It's so dangerous. Like,
Yeah.
it looks so flimsy. Like, what if you crash?" And Walter Roll was like, "Well, I don't plan on crashing," and that was it.
Yeah.
That was the end of the discussion.
Yeah.
But then kicks off the 1983 rally season. First race is in Monte Carlo, funny enough. And it was very icy that year. And so the Quattro was bound to be dominant, of course, on the ice, four-wheel drive, instead of a rear-wheel drive Lancia, skidding across the surface. But the Italians had a little trick up their sleeve. They
Cardboard
talked
roll
with
cages.
the French governing body officials of the race, and they said, these roads are very dangerous for spectators who want to come by and observe. And so these roads need to be cleaned up. They need to be salted. It's not safe for spectators to get up onto the climb of the rally and on these icy roads. We need them. You have to clean them up. And the French were, of course, like, "Oh yes, of course, we'll clean them up." And so while the Lancia engineers sprinkled salt onto the course and got the French governing body to clean up the track, Audi prepped their car. And so Lancia chilled back and used their little ace up their sleeve, and Audi panicked trying to prep their car. And Lancia additionally had stopped in the middle of the stage to change their tires after the icy portion or the icier portion was gone. Now, there was nothing in the rules that said you could change your tires, but there was also nothing in the rules that said you couldn't. And so Lancia ended up winning the Monte Carlo rally that year. And so they move over to Sweden, and Sweden is a very snowy track. Very deep snow. You look at the videos and it's just carving through the snow. And so obviously everyone thought Audi was going to be dominant. And Lancia thought Audi was going to be dominant too. So they just didn't show up. And so Audi won with flying colors in Sweden that year. And
Was this a race that Walter Roll didn't want to compete at? Was he like, "No, Sweden for me"?
I don't know if it was because of Walter Roll specifically, but Lancia
Yeah.
in general was like, "Nah, it's not worth it."
Well, it would have been just so convenient if that was also the one that Walter was like, "I don't feel like it."
There is one coming later. It's
Okay,
fun.
got it.
But then comes Portugal, and Portugal is a lot of gravel. Same. Portugal was also this past week, so
Yeah.
Audi won there as well. And then in the Safari in Kenya, Opel won. That was Safari. The Safari in Kenya was one of two races this season that Audi or Lancia did not win.
Interesting.
So Opel won this one specifically in Kenya. And then comes Corsica. And Corsica was on tarmac. And Lancia, after losing 3 and abandoning one of the races, in the previous 3, came with 4 cars ready to run. They were going to go for it. They were like, "We like this track. We're showing up." And so Lancia came with 4 cars, and in theory, if they ran flawlessly, they would be able to claim the lead from Audi if they were able to get 1, 2, and 3, and 4 on the stage. And that's exactly what they did.
Wow.
They got 1, 2, 3, and 4. They won everything. And on top of that, Audi had mechanical issues. And so they got
German engineer.
Yeah, Lancia got a nice little lead on Audi going into Acropolis. Acropolis is largely gravel. And so, of course, there was concern of, is the Lancia going to be able to handle this surface? I mean, the Audi's 4-wheel drive, it will be dominant. And Lancia, surprisingly, won again. And Audi broke down and had mechanical failures.
Yeah.
And so Lancia took it away again. It was a very, rough track. And they persevered. They persevered and they won. And then, go ahead.
Interestingly, there are people that say if Lewis Hamilton didn't have the mechanical failures in 2016 that he did, that he would have won the championship. Like if the car just didn't break and he
Yeah.
finished in that same position, he would have won that championship.
Interesting.
And others say that he should have pitted in Abu Dhabi 2021. Anyways, continue.
Well, then comes New Zealand on gravel again, and Lancia wins again due to
Dude.
Audi mechanical failures.
Rear-wheel drive cars on gravel are just unbeatable when the four-wheel drive cars can't
Yeah.
drive.
Exactly. And then Argentina comes along, and Audi finally gets their act together. It's a gravel track, and Audi pulls through. Now comes Finland, and Finland is a very jumpy track.
No more
A
gravel.
lot of air going up and hopping around. And so Walter Roll, their star driver for Lancia, said there were too many jumps and, quote, if I wanted to fly, I would be a pilot, and therefore didn't show up. So
Yep.
Audi won. And so you're going in to San Remo now, and you're getting closing up on the end of the season, and there's a lot of tension. And in theory, Lancia could take the championship in San Remo because it's been pretty even up to this point. Audi has won some, Lancia has won some. Audi's broken down a little bit. Lancia has decided to go powerboat racing with girls instead on some of them. And so you're
Resonating with one team more than the other.
and so you're getting into San Remo, and there's a big dust concern. San Remo is extremely dusty.
What
So
country
there-
is this?
This was in, oh man, I'm blanking on this one.
Is San Marino Spain?
It sounds right.
I don't know.
San Remo.
Wait, San Marino or
San Remo. Sanremo.
Oh, I have no idea.
San Remo.
Paint me a word picture. I'll imagine it.
Very, very dusty track. A lot
Got
of
it.
gravel, not a lot of jumps, but extremely fine dust.
Yeah.
And so there's always big concern every year of the cars that go out earlier have a massive advantage because the cars that go out later have to deal with all the dust kicked up by the first cars. And so Lancia tried to mitigate this by running trucks with brushes on the track first, which was largely a failure, and it didn't work. And so what Lancia did instead was when they pulled up to go to the light, they would set off in 1-minute intervals. And Lancia pulled up to the light, and as the flag guy said go, Lancia said, no, hold on, we have an issue. And so the flag guy would come over, and the co-driver would be like, my belt's not working. I can't get my belt to sit. And so they would screw with the belt for 2 or 3 minutes. And then after 2 or 3 minutes, they would finally get it. And then they would take off once the dust had settled. And the officials very quickly put a stop to this. So it didn't work for very long. But Walter Roll pulls up. And at this point, Audi was performing well, and there was, this was a dust gravel track. This was a very four-wheel drive oriented track. And so Walter Roll pulls up to the line, and there's obviously, a big question in the air of like, could Lancia do this? Like, is this even possible? And Walter Roll drove one of he claims, the best rallies he's ever driven in his entire life. And Walter Roll won 33 out of the 58 stages at San Remo.
Wow.
And he won the championship with his other 2 drivers on that team with a 1-2-3 finish.
That's crazy.
Yep. At San Remo on the dust track. And then, for the remaining races in Bandama, Celica won, and then in Wales, Audi won. And didn't really matter because Lancia already won the championship.
That's wild.
And
dude.
so a team with a powerboat racer and grid girl guy at its helm, with some drivers who only wanted to race the ones that they liked, and with a prime driver who didn't even want to be world champion, Lancia beat out Audi with all of their engineering and all of their tech and all of their preparation. And it is one of the greatest battles in rally history.
This makes me like the F37 even more.
Yeah,
Right?
isn't it so cool?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I wanted to throw that in as a tidbit. I didn't watch the most recent Portugal WRC, but a little bit of WRC history I thought would be fitting given that it happened in the past week.
Yeah. I did start to learn a little bit of WRC in preparation for this, and I learned that the stages are set up kind of similar to the Tour de France, where it's like it's not like a race of who finishes across the line first, but it's like there's dozens of races where it's like the time adds up, right?
Yeah.
To total. Which is interesting. I didn't know it was set up that way. But also the waiting for the dust to settle is interesting because in the video that I was watching, they were talking about like the dirt track stages. And they were like, actually, the cars that go out first are disadvantaged because they have to go deal with the rough terrain. But as the cars go over, the
Oh,
ground
yeah.
smooths out, and then the later drivers have an easier go of it, which is interesting.
Yeah,
But yeah, man, I've never seen an 037 in real life.
me neither.
I don't know where I would find one. I feel like the Revs is like one of the best places to see one if we were to find one.
Yeah,
And
and I'm sure if you find one, it'll be in some Italian garage with a very well used ashtray.
yeah, right.
That's probably what it'll be.
All right, you ready for segment 3?
I am ready.
All right. So segment 3 today is all about this car behind us here. We had our pick of the litter sitting in front of any car that we wanted here at the Muscle Car Museum. And we'll be back again in a few weeks with another car, but we decided today to go with this one because this one's very special to me. This is easily in my top 3 cars of all time.
Yeah.
I don't know what the other two, okay, so McLaren F1. This is the Ferrari 458 Speciale Aperta. I can't think of a third one right now. I don't know what the top 3 is. It's an open spot. I'm accepting applications. But this is definitely number 2 behind the F1. Which is phenomenal news because the F1 is very unobtainable, and this one is. Also, over 90% of all Ferraris that have ever been produced are still manufactured or are still functioning on the road.
Oh, wow.
I saw that fact the other day, which is interesting. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I had
of
a
course.
history on Ferrari. If you want to, do you want me to
by all
interject it
means. By all means.
early? Or
Yeah. Let's get started with the history on Ferrari.
yeah,
and we'll
so
talk.
I had a
about the
history. I
car.
wanted to. I totally
Yeah.
blanked because I was like, I want to hear what you got to say about it, and I forgot. I was like, oh my god, I have a whole history written out
Yeah. Go
about
for it.
Ferrari and Enzo Ferrari.
Yeah.
I can dive into that now.
Absolutely.
So I got a brief history about Ferrari. Enzo Ferrari was born in Modena in 1898 into a metal fabrication family. And he went to his first Grand Prix in 1908 in Bologna and watched Felice Nazzaro win in Bologna that year. And so at that point, he was like, I want to be in motor racing. This is what I love. But he was still in a metal fabrication family. He grew up, very grassroots style. And from 1916 to 1918, both his father and brother died of the influenza. And Enzo served as an army farrier in World War I and was discharged after a severe illness. So relatively hard life, kicking it off in the first 20 years. Father and brother die. He's small town guy, metal fab family, but just gets to see a Grand Prix and is like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. And in 1919, he comes back from the war. He recovers from his illness, and he races with CMN at Targa Florio. And he's just kind of a driver for the team. But he moves over, and he shows potential, and he moves over to Alfa Romeo from 1920 to 1929 and scores several podiums at Mugello and Savio.
At this point, Alfa Romeo is like what Ferrari is today.
Yeah.
Alfa Romeo was like the Italian
shit.
team above Maserati.
Yes.
Like the team to be at. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because going back in Formula One history, early days, Alfa Romeo was even bigger than Ferrari, even in like the 50s. Alfa Romeo was like the team to beat.
Yeah. I have some interesting tidbit.
Continue.
After World War II was the real turning point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's when it started to turn. Hadn't quite turned, but it was when it started. But in 1929, Scuderia Ferrari was founded, and a semi-factory was created in Modena by Enzo to manage private Alfa race entries.
What's a semi-factory? Like
half factory? So from what I gathered, it's not like a manufacturing factory. It's managing Alfa Romeo race cars, essentially for private entries.
Like a maintenance.
It's like a management structure. But he founds Scuderia Ferrari. And his driver career ends in 1932. Enzo Ferrari's driving career ends in 1932 with the birth of his son, Dino. And he focuses more after that point on strategy and engineering. And so
which is so ironic because Ferrari's strategy today is horrific.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's because Enzo is no longer with us.
Maybe. The other week, Charles Leclerc was driving dry race, and he goes, "There's water in my footwell," and they go, "Ah, yes, it must be the water," and he goes, "Let's add that to the words of wisdom." And then in this last race, Lewis is driving, so it's Max, Lando, Charles, and Oscar, and Max is backing them up. And if Hamilton can close the gap, then Max will pit behind Hamilton, and Hamilton can make up a spot in the race, right?
Yeah.
Hamilton's driving. He knows he's far behind, but he can't quite see the delta on his thing. So he talks to his radio engineer, and he was like, "Guys, are they still 45 seconds ahead? What's the gap?" and they go, Charles is on the mediums, and Lewis is like, what? What are you talking about? So like all the memes are like, it's Lewis being like, how many laps are left? And they're like, Papagayo's pizza with a pepperoni. Like just saying random shit. It's so funny, dude.
That's great.
Enzo's rolling in his grave. Go on.
But 1937 to 1940, Alfa absorbs his team, Enzo's team, and Enzo forms the AAC, a contraction, and in that absorption, in Alfa's absorption of Scuderia Ferrari, there's a contractual clause that delays the use of Enzo Ferrari's surname for 4 years. Now, this is important because this is 1940 and the war is brewing up.
Right.
And so there was a lot of shit that hit the fan. I don't have all the history on it, and I don't know
World War II? I'll give you
on World War II in regards to like Alfa Romeo and Ferrari. Like, I don't know all of the history. I have some tidbits. AAC that Enzo Ferrari formed in 1940 formed the Tipo 815, which competes in Mille Miglia. And it didn't finish, but it showed a lot of potential, showed a lot of promise. It was quick. And
so this is a Alfa Romeo car that Ferrari is helping to build, but not using the Ferrari name.
this is formed, and this is built under the company AAC that Enzo formed.
Got it.
And so it's his specific car, the Tipo 815.
Okay, got it. Alpha's not involved right now.
I don't know if Alfa was involved at all or not, but this is his design. It may have used an Alfa motor.
Got it.
But this is Enzo Ferrari's design.
Okay.
Under AAC.
Cool.
And then from 1943 to 1944, in that time span, AAC is working on their cars and different prototypes, but also the war is brewing up, so there's some challenges there. And then 1943 to 1944, the factory was moved to Maranello and bombed twice. But it was rebuilt quickly. And then in 1947, the Ferrari brand is launched. And the 125S with the V12 is created and raced on Via Abetone. And that's kind of the founding of Ferrari as a company as we know it today. I don't know exactly what happened with the surname and stuff like that. After the war, there was a lot of turmoil.
Right.
And so I assume they had some sort of contractual agreement, and Enzo Ferrari was able to get back the use of his name for his company. But in 1949, under Ferrari, the 166MM wins the 24 at Le Mans, which places Ferrari and Enzo Ferrari's company on the global endurance map. And then in 1950, the following year, Scuderia enters as a team into Formula One, and it had its first win in 1951 at the British Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm.
And then after this point, Ferrari continues to race. In the 1960s, Ferrari starts its road car expansion, which was largely just to fund its racing.
And critically, that's the first year of Formula One, 1950.
Yeah.
Ferrari's the only constructor team that has raced in every single year of Formula One.
Oh, yeah.
And so at the end of
That's
each year, there's a big prize that's split up amongst the winners. So like first place gets like whatever, 500 million, second place gets 300 million, third place gets 100 million, and the rest is sorted amongst the rest. Ferrari always gets X amount of money. I think it's a couple $100 million from Formula One, no matter what, as like it's almost like FIA and Formula One paying gratuity to Ferrari for being so consistent. So they always get their extra money. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But the history of the 1960s I don't have written out here, but in 1988, Enzo passes away at the age of 90.
Yep. And
just a few weeks after Enzo's passing, Ferrari scores a 1-2 at Monza, which was a very, very emotional race for the team. Obviously because they're winning a 1-2 in Ferraris at an Italian track.
Right.
And it's also quite incredible because 1988 was a McLaren Honda dominated year.
Yep.
And McLaren Honda won 15 out of 16 races that year. The only one that they didn't win being Monza.
Yeah.
And so that was, a brief history on very, very brief history on Enzo Ferrari.
That's only happened one other time in Formula One, where a constructor wins every race but one. And that was 2023.
Yeah.
Red Bull won every race except in Singapore, where Ferrari won with Sainz. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the only
Sergio Perez, was he racing Red Bull?
Yeah.
Year, and he won a couple that Max didn't, or won that Max.
Sergio won 2, Sainz won 1, and Max won 19.
Yeah.
Sergio's a Red Bull driver. So
Right.
Red
Bull
Bull were
won.
only one race away from having the 100% constructor win streak. And both times that's happened in Formula One history, Ferrari has been the one to stop it from happening.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But that was a brief history on Ferrari as a company and Enzo Ferrari.
Yeah.
For those in the audience who didn't know. But now I'll give you permission to dive into.
I learned things that I didn't know about, right? And it's I have a special appreciation for the history of Ferrari because growing up I did not like Ferrari. As I got into cars, I liked underdog, like scrappy American muscle cars because European people are fancy and arrogant and ignorant and I don't like them, etc. That was my perspective growing up, right?
Yeah.
And I grew up loving muscle cars. I remember the Dodge Challenger was like my first car that I was like, wow. When I learned about the Hellcat, I was like, oh my God, right? This is what I love.
Yeah.
And I mean, my dad grew up driving me around in the Camaro. So I grew up loving muscle cars and not really caring about like European spec cars. And eventually, as I get into those styles of cars, I start to come around to it. And this car in particular is a big reason for that. So a little bit of history on this car. This is the 458 Speciale Aperta, and it's named the 458 because it has a 4.5 liter 8-cylinder engine. So 4.5 8-cylinder 458. And that nomenclature is carried through a couple different cars. So like the 488 is a 4.8 liter a 4.8 liter 8-cylinder engine. So 488, right?
And it was carried through with the 308, the 328.
Yeah.
430 doesn't hold that. They're spotty. Italians are funny.
That's what's interesting. Is like the 430 doesn't hold, the 812 doesn't hold,
612. Actually, I guess that one is 6-liter V12. I think.
I'm not sure.
I know it has a V12 in it, but
yeah, it's a little spotty, right? But for this specific car, it's got the nomenclature that I like because it has a reason, so I can follow it easily, right?
Yeah.
So the 458 is this base model car. And in 2014, they started producing them, and there were 15,000 coupes built, or coupes, right? Because it's Italian.
Coupe.
You know what I learned the other day? So Grace and I have been watching TV going to sleep recently. She's been watching the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives TV show, and I fall asleep watching it. I mentioned it in the other podcast. But the other night we were watching the Great British Baking Show, which is ironic to me because I know British food is being terrible, but they've got a whole baking show at it, right? But one of them, it was like Italian week and they were making pizzas. And they were like, I want you to make pizza margherita. And I was like, why the fuck did they say it like that? And Grace was like, that's the name. And I was like, no, it's not. It's a margherita pizza. And she was like, nuh-uh, it's pizza margherita. And I was like, why? And she was like, it's just the way it's said. And I was like, that's not true. And so I looked it up. It's an Italian dish called pizza margherita because it's named after Queen Margherita, which is why it's not spelled margarita like the drink. It's spelled margarita like the name.
Yeah.
Actually, my best friend from high school, his mom's name is Margarita. So I know this is real. Her name is Margarita, right? And in Italian, the noun comes before the adjective, or the other way around, right? So they don't say pepperoni pizza, they say pizza pepperoni, right? And so we don't say pizza pepperoni because the English language is the other way around. We say pepperoni pizza, adjective then noun, right? But in Italian, they would say pizza pepperoni. And so I told Grace, I was like, it's not pizza margherita, it's margherita pizza. And if you go to Italy, you're going to say pizza margherita, but you're also going to say everything else backwards because you're not speaking English anymore, you're speaking Italian. And she was like, well, I'm going to say it the way the Italians say it. And I was like, how do you say Porsche? How do you say Adidas or Adidas? People don't do this, right? You're speaking English. It's okay to not use the accent. It's okay to say whatever, right? But this is 15,000 coupes were made, right? Now I'm going to say it that way.
15,000 or 100?
15,000.
Okay.
Of the base model.
Okay,
yeah. And then there were 6,000 Spiders made. Spider is a soft top convertible. There were 3,000 Speciales made. So that's a hard top special edition with extra horsepower, better suspension, higher quality, whatever, right? And then there were 499 Speciale Apertas. And Aperta means open in Italian because it's a hardtop convertible, right? And then there were 150 458 challenge cars made, which were just the race cars, right? Race spec cars. So there's 24,649 total Ferrari 458s. 2% are Speciale Apertas. So this is a rare car. And of those, God knows how many are in this color, because there are a lot of different color options.
Yeah.
There's red, white, red stripes, black stripes, blue stripes. You can get it in gray. You could get it in white. I think you could get it in a blue. There was black. There was yellow stripes. There's a lot of different base color options and a lot of stripe color options. Some have stripes, some don't, right? So of the 499 that were made, there are very few of each color combo, right? So a little bit more about the specifications of this car. We're talking the Speciale Aperta now, so not the regular 458. It's got 597 horsepower, revving to 9,000 RPM. And so almost twice the horsepower of our Lancia that we were talking about earlier. It's got 398 pound-feet of torque at 6,000 RPM. So my Camaro might have more torque than it. I'm not sure. It does 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, which 0 to 60 doesn't mean anything to me anymore. You know, I bring it up later on in the podcast, but so you know it. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, or just under. I think it's 2.8. Top speed of 200 miles an hour. So it wouldn't be able to hit 230 on the Mulsanne straight like the other cars. 7-speed dual clutch transmission that uses technology from Formula One. Its dry weight is 2,900 pounds. And that's only 110 more pounds than the coupe or coupe.
Okay.
Which is important because usually hardtop cars are significantly heavier because of all the machinery that goes into moving the hardtop up and down, because it's automatic. You press a button. Actually, this hardtop goes up and down in 14 seconds. And I remember when the McLaren 720S came out, they boasted a hardtop as being the fastest moving up and down at the highest speed. Do you know what those numbers are? I believe it's 35 miles an hour. The McLaren 720S hardtop can go up and down in 11 seconds. And that car came out in 2019.
Yeah.
So this was 5 years previous, and it's only a 3-second improvement. And the McLaren, I think, still holds the record. Or maybe it's a Mazda Miata. I can't recall.
Miata's pretty quick.
But it's roughly...
My manual Miata top can go down in about 0.1 seconds at 80 miles an hour.
speed.
Yeah.
So as far as hardtops go, impeccable example, right?
Yeah.
It's got Alcantara dashboard and seats, custom color stitching, etc., right? Everything that you would expect. It's got a rev indicator on the steering wheel. It's got paddle shifters. Interestingly, the paddles are mounted to the dashboard or the steering column and not the wheel. So the paddles don't move with your hand, which I don't think I knew until I sat in the car today. But I thought that the paddles were connected to the wheel. So bummer. Wish they were. Maybe
I
I won't
actually
put the
like
car
the
anymore.
paddles being stationary.
Why?
I don't know. It's I feel like it's like grounding in some sense, like having long paddles. Like they're always going to be there. Like even if your wheel is like turned around or whatever, like
Yeah, it's true.
in that sense. But I've driven cars with both, and they're just different.
Yeah.
Like you get used to either.
I guess I'm used to when I'm looking at, I haven't driven a race car with paddle shifters before, but when I watch the Formula One drivers race, like the left hand stays on the left side of the steering wheel the full time, because the turning ratio means that even at full lock, like their hand is only like, a little bit past fully vertical. So your hand is always on the paddle, right? But with these cars and their steering ratios and their longer wheelbase, you might pass the wheel from one hand to the next, right? So maybe it would actually be easier to have longer paddles stationary on the dash. I had considered that.
I don't know. Yeah, but I do. I like the look of the long paddles too,
Oh yeah?
drooping down. Yeah, it's just pretty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It is pretty.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
It also has the turn indicators as buttons on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
So the Camaro that I drive has the horn on the steering wheel. So it's easy for me to honk the horn just with my thumb without taking my hand off the wheel.
Yeah.
But the turn indicator is a pain in the ass on that car. And so I've always wanted this car for no reason other than the buttons on the turn indicator. No other reason, right? Also, there's so many things that I knew about the car beforehand, but it had slipped my mind until we got to experience it today.
Yeah.
but it's got carbon fiber door panels. It's got the elastic mesh netting on the door panel instead of like an actual pocket or area because it's lighter weight.
It's got carbon ceramics.
It's got carbon ceramic brakes. Actually, the brakes are adapted from the LaFerrari.
Yeah,
And
makes sense.
the steering wheel is carbon fiber. No Alcantara on steering wheel, interestingly. It's rubber.
Yep.
And the Scarpa shoes.
I prefer rubber wheels. I don't like Alcantara wheels.
Oh, really?
No.
The steering wheel we got for SAE was Alcantara.
I know.
Interesting. Huh.
But it's I much prefer the feel of leather with the glove.
Well, that's not leather. That's just rubber.
Oh, sorry. Well,
Either.
leather-esque.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I think it is leather on there.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
We could
I'm pretty sure. But
we'll double check this.
I like the feeling of leather, regardless.
Yeah.
But
The
Alcantara, I feel like it slips for some reason. Like it just has the fabric has flex to it, and I
Yeah.
don't like that.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, the fibers like kind of they flex a little bit more than the leather. The leather just kind of sits.
It grips. Yeah. Yeah. The Scarpa shoes that I normally wear have Alcantara on them.
Mm.
So
I love the look of it just driving.
yeah, I love the feel of it too.
Yeah.
But maybe for steering wheels it's not so good. But even then, this steering wheel, I find that driving your Miata has spoiled me because the size of steering wheel is so much more enjoyable than these size steering wheels
Yeah.
of like standard production cars. But so getting to experience it in person has been awesome. Additionally, something that I read about and am familiar with but can't see right now is the active aero flaps.
Mm.
There are actually 2 active aero flaps here. One of them is in the front bumper right here on either side of the Ferrari logo, and then the other one is in the back under the diffuser. Actually, I believe there's also a rear wing that lifts up. I can't recall.
Looks like there might.
There might be. I know for a fact that these 2. You want to walk back there and take a look?
Yeah, I'll take a peek.
Cool.
Why not? You can keep
I'll
chatting
keep
about
talking
it.
while you
Yeah.
chat. The flaps up here move at 105 miles an hour to divert air, because it needs air at lower speeds for the radiators, but at higher speeds it gets enough ambient airflow. And then the one in the back changes above 135 miles an hour to make sure that you have enough aero balance in the rear, so you don't lose traction in the rear.
Got it. There is no rear wing.
No rear wing. There you go. So let's see. This car has the same Fiorano lap time. So Fiorano is the private testing track that Ferrari has in Italy, right?
Yeah.
So
At Maranello, I believe.
it's at Maranello, yeah. So it has the same Fiorano lap time as the Speciale Coupe. So even with the extra 110, same exact lap time to the thousandth of the second, right? That's from fastestlaptimes.com.
Yeah.
Interestingly, 5 of the top 10 fastest Fiorano lap times from various cars are Michael Schumacher's. And he has the fastest Fiorano lap time with the F1 car from 2004.
Oh, yeah.
That's the fastest a car has been around Fiorano. Interestingly, I just heard the other day, Max Verstappen has been racing the Nürburgring on the sim for years. How many laps do you think he's done in a real car?
Oh, at the Nürburgring? I think he's only done like 4 or 5.
He's done 3 laps, and one of them was the track record
Yeah.
for that class of car.
I remember that.
Is that not fucking unreal?
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. That's insane.
Yeah, I used to race the Nürburgring on iRacing religiously
Yeah.
all the time.
Dude,
It's just such a technical track.
I saw an interview of a guy who, I guess he's Max's friend. He's around him. He's also a racing driver, right? He was like, I went with Max to that Nürburgring day, and like we did sim racing the night before at the Nürburgring, and then the morning of, he was watching a live stream of the cars driving at the track to see what the track conditions were like before he got there.
Wow.
He knows the bumps in the road from the simulator and can see the traction going over those bumps from the live stream video of the cars running. So by the time he got there, he only needed 2 laps to like get up to speed to do
Wow.
the fastest lap.
That's amazing.
That lap time was set in a Ferrari. So that's some performance records. Now, I have one cool engineering fact, right? So I'll test your memory here. Have you read this sheet?
No.
Okay. So in college, we took a course in engineering called internal combustion engineering, or internal combustion engines, right? Fundamentals of ICE,
Yeah.
taught by Jared Mikla, who's one of my favorite people on earth,
Yeah.
right? If you could influence one variable to increase power of an engine, what is that variable?
Just one variable.
One variable. I know you know it. Even if you don't say it.
Displacement. I mean, because if you increase air, you have to increase fuel.
What's the other one?
Air-fuel compression ratio.
Compression ratio,
Yeah.
right? So generally speaking, what's a good compression ratio, right? Do
A
you remember?
standard car would be like 9 to
Yeah.
1.
So a performance car would have,
Maybe like a depending if it's turboed, it's going to be lower because of the
Yeah.
boost pressure. But in a high performance naturally aspirated car, you're probably sitting around like 11.5 plus or minus.
right. This, interestingly, is the last of the naturally aspirated V8 engines in a Ferrari car.
Yeah,
Because they switched over to turbos, right?
that's cool.
This is a 14-to-1 compression ratio.
Wow,
Isn't that
that's a lot
That
for
is
a production car.
insane?
Yeah,
That's insane. That's crazy. Like when we were doing that engineering course, we would fuck like around with the numbers to try to make crazy powerful car. Like we would just fuck the math to see if
Yeah.
what we could do, right? And like the highest I could find was like 13.2 or something like that,
yeah. Remember that crazy shit I
with like a
built?
37-to-1 compression
It
ratio.
was something crazy. It was like 16 or 17 to 1,
Yeah.
and it was some lower displacement V10 that
You were like-
revved really high.
Yeah, I thought it was like you were like, oh, this is a Jaguar inline 8-cylinder with a 37-to-1 compression.
Yeah, it
ratio.
was some crazy. I don't know.
But yeah,
If you want to read the 60-page report on it, I can
Yeah.
send it to you.
But what I love, I mean, high compression ratio engines from an engineering perspective is interesting to me, right? High revving naturally aspirated engines, any car enthusiast absolutely loves those, right? And this is currently the epitome of the naturally aspirated V8 that Ferrari produces. And so just an incredible everything
Yeah.
in my opinion, right? So that's everything that I have on the car. Now I'll talk about a little bit of my experience with the car. Because like I mentioned earlier, I grew up hating Ferrari. I hated arrogance. I hated ignorance. I hated snobbery. I didn't like rich people, right? I hated the whole rich people don't pay taxes thing. And eventually I came to learn that anybody who doesn't pay taxes should be made to pay taxes. But if you can do tax write-offs, that is within the legal bounds and that's allowable, right?
Yeah.
Even people with not a lot of money can write money off their taxes, right? Last year, I lost money over the course of 2024. I wound up with less money at the end of 2024 than at the start of it, right? But I was still able to write stuff off my taxes because of Kahuna, right?
Yeah.
I think I ended 2024 with like $1,100 in my bank account or something like that. So even with no money, you can still write money off your taxes, right?
Oh, life update. My paycheck hit, so now I have more than $200 in my bank account.
That's awesome. And rent isn't due until this afternoon.
Yeah. Well, my rent's kind of flexible too.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I just drop it off to
You guy. Yeah.
yeah, to the owner when is convenient.
That's awesome because it's not convenient until next month, boss. Anyways,
It'll be a week or two.
so I grew up not really being a fan of rich people, not really a fan of whatever, right? And I was really big into muscle cars. And so actually I keep talking about like things that I'm going to talk about later on, but I wasn't a fan of Ferrari in particular, not just rich people and fancy cars, but Ferrari in particular, because I had heard that in order to buy some Ferraris, you have to be invited to do it, or you have to own a certain number of Ferraris before then. And I was like, that's lame. If you have the money, you should be able to buy it. That's dumb. You're not that special. It's just a car, whatever.
Yeah.
Very early days. My favorite car at the time was a Hellcat. So like, let's take this with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah.
It was very naive.
My favorite car as a kid was a Bugatti Veyron.
Really?
I was a Veyron.
It wasn't F40? I thought it was F40 through and through.
I like the F40 a lot, but when the Veyron came out, Jeremy Clarkson and the Top Gear team really clung to that car as like a flagship of engineering. And so me kind of following their lead was like, oh my God, it is so cool.
You know what's
No.
funny? I hate the Veyron.
Yeah.
Not hate, but I do not like it. I don't like
like it.
looking at it.
I like it. I think it's cool.
I think that
I've seen one in person and it's, I think you have too, right? A Veyron?
I've seen the
like you-
Chiron.
Oh,
I
Chiron.
love the way the Chiron looks.
Yeah.
Do not love the way the Veyron looks.
Veyron just looks, I don't know. It's probably kid nostalgia for me.
I don't know. There are a lot of people that like the car.
Yeah.
And I mean, Ed Bolian great taste in cars, right? From VinWiki. It's just not for him, or he loves it. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's just not for me.
Right.
And I haven't really thought about why. The rear wing doesn't do it for me. I don't like how thick the hydraulics are compared to how thin the actual rear wing is. But even with the rear wing down, it just looks too like, I think it's too bubbly, like it's too rounded for my taste. Like it's almost like the wheelbase is too short for how tall the car is in terms of round.
Yeah, it's a unique looking car. That's for sure.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, my experience growing up with the Veyron was always the top speed competition between the Veyron and the Koenigseggs.
Yeah.
And I'm a Koenigsegg fan through and through. So
Koenigseggs are.
I was always
fucking
shitting
cool.
on the Veyron because of that.
Yeah.
But in any case, so I really dislike Ferraris because of the snobbery, right? And anytime I saw a Ferrari, I was like, ugh. And the whole like a race car is red thing that Ferrari spoke about, I was like, that's lame. Race cars to be other colors. I was just counterculture, right? I just didn't like it.
Sure.
And at the time I was watching Vehicle Virgins. Parker, I don't know his last name. A YouTuber, lived out in California. Similar style videos to like Daily Driven Exotics or Stradman, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
I also watched Street Speed 717. I'll talk about him later. But Vehicle Virgins at the time was driving a McLaren, and I loved the McLaren. And this is after I went through like a little spiritual awakening with European cars, and I loved his. Yeah, I think he had a 650S McLaren, right? And he made an announcement that he was buying a new car. At the time, he owned the Lamborghini Huracan Performante, I believe, with the Van Halen wrap. Have you seen that?
No.
Do you know the Van Halen album Eruption with the red, white, and
Yeah.
black stripes? He had his car, his Lamborghini, wrapped in that pattern.
That is wild.
To this day, it's one of the coolest liveries I've ever seen on a car. I love it so much,
Yeah.
right? He had it custom made for that car. And so I loved both the cars he had. He had a purple, like a deep midnight purple 650S right after it came out with the top mounted exhaust and the ceramic rear wing so that the flames didn't melt the carbon fiber. So cool. And he announced he was getting a new car, and I was excited to see what it was. And then he told the audience that it was a Ferrari, and I was like, oh, bummer, not a Ferrari guy. But I was a loyal follower of his channel. This is before he started doing whatever kind of drugs he was doing. Something was going on. I don't know what. Never been confirmed. But he reveals this car. And my very first impression is I love that color scheme. It was this yellow with the white stripe, but instead of the black, it was maize blue.
Yeah.
And I forgot to look this up, but I meant to look it up. That color pattern with the yellow, blue, and white is the NART, N-A-R-T, which is the North American racing team that Ferrari has. So it's an American color scheme.
Got it.
I didn't know that until yesterday, but I've always loved the maize blue with the white and the yellow. As soon as I saw the color palette, I was like, I'll give this car a chance because this man clearly knows taste when it comes to liveries and colors, right?
Yeah.
And as he talked about the car, he was passionate about it, and he spoke to the status and the meaning behind the car, not just to him, but as Ferrari as a whole culture. And I remember it vividly as the first time that I saw Ferrari from an enthusiast perspective. Not a rich guy who doesn't care about cars, not a guy who's buying cars because he wants clout, but genuinely from someone who cares about cars and cares about the impact that Ferrari has had on the culture. And in watching that video, I was like, okay, I think I'm starting to understand that I shouldn't hate a brand for their followers. I should follow a brand for what their meaning is. And so this car to me embodies one of the first life lessons in personal growth that I can remember having, which is...
What's that? I think that's one of the cars beeping.
Oh.
That wasn't my camera sound.
Huh, okay, we'll
Yeah.
keep going.
Well, there you go. An AMCM car beep for you. Brought to you
Well,
by Vision 79.
They've got these cars on the battery chargers. I wonder if it's just signaling that it's fully charged or something.
Yeah,
Sure.
probably. Because they got the ropes down over here. I bet they're doing some stuff. But yeah, that wasn't my camera.
Okay, cool. This car for me symbolized separating intent from interpretation, which is so important to me because I feel that people, when someone speaks, they interpret it differently than how it's spoken almost all the time. It's honestly, and I've noticed it's rare for someone to speak and be interpreted perfectly for what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
I think that an indicator of being a good communicator is having the interpretation and intent lined up properly, right? And that was my first time recognizing, okay, the way that I am viewing something isn't exactly the same as the way someone is displaying something, right? So Enzo Ferrari might not have been a total snob like today's Ferrari owners are. And just because today's Ferrari owners are snobs, A, doesn't mean they all are, and B, doesn't mean that that's what the car symbolizes. The car can symbolize something different.
Mm.
And this was the first time I had seen a different intent displayed, and my interpretation then changed. And I've tried to carry that on uh, throughout my future life, and it's been really helpful in allowing me to view same situations from others' perspectives, which I think is key in becoming a good communicator.
Yeah.
But that's what this car symbolized to me, and it's the first time that I've really fallen in love with a Ferrari. And it's funny because I used to hate Ferrari, but I feel like everybody has a first time they fell in love with a Ferrari, a specific car. So like for Ed Bolian, it was a 430 Strad.
Yeah.
For you, I'm guessing the F40.
It was actually a 308.
There you go. The
Actually,
GTR.
308 because when I first got introduced to like kind of Ferrari outside of racing, I watched like some old race clips and stuff like that when I was like young, a kid,
Yeah.
6 or whatever. But like I started to get introduced to like Ferrari as a culture icon and as a brand around Magnum PI, the old spy show based in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And he drove a 308 GTSI.
Interesting.
And so the kind of like the first Ferrari I latched onto was a 308. And I don't even know if I'd really found the F40 at that point. Like I was young. I was, 7
Right.
maybe. And so I was still kind of exploring different cars and, just starting to get into Top Gear and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I found the F40 and I was like, oh my God, like this is the number of my name. This car embodies everything I love about race cars on the street. Like it's the last of the, the Enzo series. Like it's
Oh, so you had your racing number before you found the F40.
well, yeah. Well, because my racing number was based on my name.
What do you mean?
Because my last name, Sorok,
Mm-hmm.
it is the number 40 in Russian.
Oh, Sorok means 40.
It is. It's literally 40. Like when you're counting in Russian, 40 is Sorok.
Oh, I
So
never
like
knew.
41 would be 41, 42, 43, 44.
Interesting.
So like Sorok is literally 40.
Huh. Did
Yeah.
your parents choose your last name?
Yeah, so my mom,
Solstead, right?
yeah, my mom's last name is Solstead. That was not her birth name.
Got it.
Her birth name was, I believe, I know my Baba's current last name was Yakimova. Her maiden name, I believe, my mom's maiden name was Chaika, I think. I don't know. I'm probably going to screw this up.
Okay.
But it's complicated because my Baba was married and then they got divorced, and then my mom was married and then they got divorced. That's why my mom's name was Solstead, but she never changed it. My family history on both sides, I know, like it's very like spotty.
Right.
I just haven't really dug into it too much. But yeah, my mom's nickname in Russia in high school was she was her nickname was Yaksorok, which means Mark 40, and it was named after the fastest airplane in the USSR at the time. The fastest jet in the USSR was Yaksorok, Mark 40, the jet. And so she was a runner in high school, and so her nickname was Yaksorok, Katya Yaksorok,
Yeah.
kind of like a
Nickname.
team joke or
Yeah.
a team name.
Because she was a fast runner.
Yeah, because she was a fast runner. It was like a team name, not a joke. But
Yeah.
when she came over to the U.S. and she had me, she didn't really want to name me Solstead after divorced husband.
Right.
And my dad's situation was complicated to not get into all the details. And so she, I wasn't going to be named after my dad's last name, which is Nutter. And so she was calling up a friend of hers from Russia, and her friend was like, how are you doing in the U.S.? How's Yaksorok? How's Yaksorok? And actually, she had cancer.
Your mom?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
When I was and she had I won't go into it because it's personal for her, but there was a lot of challenges and complications surrounding my birth and early life.
Gotcha.
Involving her cancer and her medical situation. And so it was hard times, of course, and so her friend was calling her up, and she was like, "Yak Sorok, like you always used to be the fast runner. You also used to be like the cheery one." And so she named me Sorok after that. And so my name translates to 40. That's where it comes from. My mom doesn't have the same last name. My dad doesn't have the same last name. And so I'm kind of like a first of the generation in that sense. But my racing number, I always like kind of sought towards 40, in terms of a racing number. But then when I found the F40, I was like, oh my God, like not only is this car like the last car that Enzo touched, not only is this car like just this crazy, like it's everything I love about production race cars, where it's like it's a race car, but then Italians just went, let's put a plate on it. It's just like this, like nothing is like perfect and refined on it. You know what I mean? Like it's got, drawstrings for handles essentially, and it's bare bones. It's super basic. Like it's nothing. It's not like the Bugatti interior, right? This car is just a race car for the street. And I was like, this is, and it's mean and it's visceral and it's fast and it's loud. And I was like, I love this thing. And it was like the additional connection of like literally being F40 connected to my name. I was like, this is like so me. Like I felt attached. So at the point I found the F40, I was like, oh my God, like this is the dream car. But originally, like the first kind of Ferraris I started stumbling on were like the 308 from Magnum PI, the 308 GTSI, as well as the different Top Gear reviews that they did. The 430, the 458 was one of them, right? The Enzo they did a review on. But once I started diving into the F40, I was like, oh my God, like this is my car.
The F40. I have seen in comparison with the F1, the McLaren F1, because it's logo is the F40 and the F1.
Yeah, Doug DeMiro did a hour-long episode driving the. Actually, shit, I thought it was the F1 for a second, and I started the story, and I realized it was the Carrera GT versus the F40.
Gotcha.
But anyways, go ahead.
The F40 to me symbolizes the end of the like space tube chassis, like V8 era.
Yeah, well, the F40 was monocoque.
Was it not a space frame chassis?
No. That's why that guy on YouTube who's trying to build one is having like all this trouble with like body panels.
It has a carbon fiber monocoque?
I'm almost positive.
I think the McLaren F1 is the first production car with a carbon fiber monocoque.
Might have been fiberglass then.
Yeah,
I'm gonna look it up.
I think that
I'll look it up
in
the
break segments.
Yeah,
but to me that the F40 symbolizes like the perfection of old school racing.
Yeah,
it's like all of the years of perfecting V8s, manual transmissions, the space frame tube chassis, carbon fiber body panels, like stripping weight out of fucking everything, like the carbon fiber weave with the paint,
yes, yeah.
To me, it's the epitome of like pure racing. And then the McLaren F1 to me symbolizes like the true birth of like the next generation, like the next age,
agree,
right?
That alongside like the 959 were really
I was about
integral.
to say the 959 is like this interesting like middle phase because it's the first car with turbos, right? And so like to me the 959 is like the first of the forced induction like generation, but all of the different technology that's in the McLaren F1. Yeah, I mean
first with rear wheel steering, I think too. First production car with adaptive suspension.
Yep.
First car. Well, I think it was first car with electronically adaptive all-wheel drive.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
There was other variants of all-wheel drive systems, of course. I mean, we talked about
there's two 40 feet away. We can go look at them.
Yeah. Very true.
Dude, we should do some B-roll of those to put over.
Yeah. I definitely have.
Dude, there's so many cars in here. I wonder if they would be willing to let us come back like once every couple months and just do a showcase on a different car.
That would be very cool.
That would be cool.
That would be fun.
But so does your last name like when you're speaking in Russian, does it sound like
Sorok? It sounds like I'm literally saying the number 40.
Got it.
Yeah.
So like what happened to the first 39 cents?
And then I Americanized it, and it's like I say Sorok because like, I'm not like Alexander Sorok, or I don't say like Sasha Sorok. Like my Sander would translate to Sasha. So like, I talked with Russian family members like I am Sasha. So Sasha Sorok.
Right.
But
you don't say pizza margarita. Say Sorok.
Yeah.
Say Sorok.
Yeah.
It's Americanized, right? Yeah.
Right.
Different accent.
But yeah, it literally translates to 40.
So that's what I have on this car. Um, you know, this is definitely going to be when Parker with Vehicle Versions bought it in I think 2019, he paid 700,000 for it, and it's only gone up in value since then. So this is over $1 million car now. Um, I definitely this I think is probably the most likely to be my first car that's over $1 million.
Yeah.
Um, just because of how much it means to me. Definitely is going to happen before McLaren F1, that's for sure. But yeah, I would very much like to own or at least drive one of these in the near future. But yeah, that's what I've got for it.
It's a beautiful car.
It is. You ready for segment 3?
I am.
All right.
Let's go for it.
So segment 3 today is on racing and its role in our lives. So racing for me did not begin with motorsports. Growing up, my best friend was a diehard NASCAR fan. Cars was my favorite movie, the Pixar movie. And I loved riding in the Camaro with my dad hunting for yellow lights. If we were approaching an intersection that was like about to turn green, it is safer in that car to hit the throttle and like gas through the light than to try to hit the brakes. Right?
Yeah.
Because who knows, someone could rear end us. Maybe we stop in the middle. Who knows, right? So we would go hunting for yellow lights.
I
Maybe
used to
some.
go hunting for puddles to splash through after I got my driver's license.
Oh
I
yeah.
really enjoyed that in my mom's Forester.
Oh, that's
Like
funny.
going out in the rain and hunting for puddles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember my dad would pick me up from NASA daycare at the Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah.
He would pick me up in the Camaro and he would be playing heavy metal like Godsmack or Korn in the Camaro. And so it's funny because everyone else's parents were pulling up in like minivans and like Corollas and stuff, and then dad would show up with the T-tops out and like rock music playing. And I mean, you can't make that car quiet if you tried, right? So
Yeah.
and it had such this distinct smell when I got into it too. And I'm used to the smell now. I'm used to the car. It doesn't smell quite the same, but every once in a while, like I'll go to get in the car, especially if it's been a couple of days since I've driven it, and I sit in it and I can smell it again.
Yeah.
And it's the same smell. I love that car.
Tom used to pick up Alex, Tom from Autobahn,
Mhm.
used to pick up Alex in customer cars when he started Autobahn.
That's awesome.
That's
He
right.
looked like super rich.
Yeah, I think one of his stories would he rolled up in like a Ferrari 308, which
Mhm.
was like a newer car at the time.
Yeah.
And all the kids were like, "Oh my god!" And Tom picking up, little Alex from
That's so
grade
funny.
school in a 308.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would speed through yellow lights. We might have slowed down to catch a yellow light once or twice.
Yeah.
Who's to say? There's no doubt in my mind that I grew up loving cars, but I didn't grow up watching racing. My passion for cars grew bolder when I turned 16 and was presented the opportunity to get my driver's license and get my own car.
Mm.
At the time, I had failed the fall semester of Algebra 2 and was forced to take the spring semester online because I wouldn't be able to keep up with the rest of the classroom. So every morning I would ride with my mom and brother to high school. We'd drop my brother off, and my mom and I would drive to Steak and Shake for chocolate milk and algebra online lessons on my laptop. My mom and I would sit across from each other, and she would watch TV on her iPad while I studied. And I vividly recall spacing out 3 sentences into the first lesson and realizing that there was no accountability and nothing stopping me from using the time that should be spent learning algebra to learn about cars. So keeping one eye on my mom, I opened a second tab and I literally typed in, this is the sentence, how to build a car from start to finish. How naive of me, right? And I vividly remember the first video I watched was a guy filming on a potato in like some shit garage with no lighting and it's raining in the background. And he's just talking about like parts. It's just, I couldn't even tell you what the parts are. It's like shitty piston heads, a bent crankshaft. It's just garbage. And he's just talking about it. No video graphics or anything like that.
Yeah.
So like there's nothing, I don't know what the 4-stroke, 2-stroke cycle is. I don't know anything about, differentials or braking systems or hydraulics. I don't know anything. Literally nothing, right? And that's where it started. And I spent that time learning about cars instead of math. And at the end of that year was the end of course exam for Algebra 2. And if I didn't pass that test, I would have to retake algebra and maybe graduate late because of the way that the math was set up in high school. And I took the exam. I maybe knew 4 answers. I did not do well. There's no way I passed. I left some blank. And I walked out of there going, I'm so fucked, right? And everyone else walked out saying the same thing. And I was like, yeah, we had a bad teacher. This stuff is hard. I don't know. But like, you guys will be fine, I'm sure, right? And then it came out that the EOC that year had been changed. And it was so difficult that like less than 10% of students passed it. So they just scratched the scores and everybody passed. So
Yep.
I got to move on to pre-calculus with no fundamental understanding of algebra, or algebra 2, I guess.
Yeah.
And instead I spent that time learning about cars. And I think that's been pretty symbolic of where my priorities lay at my core,
Mhm.
which is I would always rather follow something that I'm passionate about than something that sucks, even if it's important, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's how I began with cars, right? And then of course that grew into car culture, right? The Fast and Furious movies, my friends recommended to me, so I sat down and watched the first like 5 in a row. I absolutely loved them. And that was big in my early taste in cars because they idolized the Dodge Challenger or Charger with the supercharger. Do you remember this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen the movies? You haven't.
The Fast and Furious ones?
Yeah.
I think I watched 7, but that's it.
The seventh one.
Yeah, and I watched like
one
part of
sucks.
Tokyo Drift. I think that was like 3-ish.
Yeah.
It was like came out along with 3 or something.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not
It came out of order
familiar.
with Tokyo Drift. It was like
Yeah.
it was filmed later, but the timing was set earlier. Anyways, that was a big influence into my early taste in cars. I started loving muscle cars. Obviously, the Camaro that my dad would pick me up in every morning was very influential. And then, further being established in Fast and Furious. And interestingly, my passion for muscle cars grew, and at the same rate, my disdain for JDM and European cars grew, because everybody in the Fast and Furious movie that drove the JDM cars were kind of assholes, and everybody driving muscle cars were like super cool, right? And the muscle cars were idolized, and I can't explain why that had such a hold on me, but that had a fucking tight grip on me for a long time. Where I remember I got my braces done at a orthodontist called Dr. Caudle, and people were talking about how Dr. Caudle had a Porsche and he was, really fancy and like really successful. And I was like, dude, fuck that guy and his Porsche, right?
Mm.
Which is ironic because now some of my favorite cars of all time are Porsches, right? But I didn't like European cars. I only liked American muscle cars. And I remember the moment that switch flipped. As I mentioned before, I would watch Street Speed 717 on YouTube, right? Along with Vehicle Virgins and Stradman and everyone else. And I remember I found his channel because he had a Hellcat, which was my favorite car, and he was getting a new Corvette. And this must have been 2019 or 2018. It was when the C7 Corvette came out with the manual transmission and the ZTK big wing
That was
package.
18?
Yeah. The car, the engine and supercharger on it is so big that there's a cutout in the hood, and it's illegal to drive that car in Europe because if you hit a pedestrian, they can hit the actual engine cover instead of the hood. There's one of them's at the end of this.
Yeah, there is one over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, orange one.
Cue the voiceover clip. I love that car, right? It's to this day a top 20 favorite cars, right? Absolutely love it. And he got the ZTK high wing package and the manual transmission. And I loved watching those videos. The problem is he would post a video like every other day, and half the content would be about his new Corvette, and the other half would be about his McLaren 520 or 570S that he had previous to the Corvette. And I don't like European cars, as we've established, and I don't like McLarens, as we've established. So I was like, gross. I don't want to watch this McLaren shit. So I would skip through all the McLaren bits, right? But I remember that over time, he would do a roll race in the Corvette, and then he would race the same guy in the McLaren. And then he would race the Corvette against the McLaren. And then he would take the Corvette to Cars and Coffee, but he'd go home and get the McLaren to go to the next thing, right? And as I watched these videos, I realized that over time, I stopped watching the videos for the Corvette and I had started watching them for the McLaren. And I was actually more interested in the McLaren than in the Corvette. And I didn't really know what was happening to me. I think this is what becoming gay must feel like, because I was like confused, but enjoying it,
I am delivered.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And then McLaren announced the 650S. And I was like, oh, I do like these cars. These cars are awesome.
Yeah.
And from then on, I started learning about racing. because growing up, I had never really clicked with ball sports. I was bad at soccer, bad at football, but I loved rowing. And part of the reason I loved rowing is there was no uncertainty about it. It was, did you cross the line first? If not, then you didn't put enough work in. That's it. There's no arguing. It's clear cut. It's just who crosses the line first. So I loved racing, but I didn't know that I loved motor racing. And so that was a very easy transition into watching Formula One, which is ironic because 2021 very quickly proved that you don't just cross the line first and it's as easy as that. There's a lot more drama. Right?
Yeah.
But what really hammered home my passion for McLaren for me was my mom got me a birthday gift. I think this was my 19th birthday of doing, it's called like Extreme Experience. It's like go out on the track and do like 3 laps in a supercar, right? And I had the option of either driving the car myself or riding while a professional driver drives. And my mom was like, we're going to get you the McLaren that you like from that guy you watch on YouTube. You're going to love it. And I was like, oh my God. And she was like, you're going to get to drive it. And I was like, I don't want to drive it. And she was like, why? Are you scared? And I was like, no, I just know that I'm not going to be able to push the car as hard as it can go. And I want to feel what the car can do, not what I can do. And I got in the car, big guy, Bubba driving the car, huge dude, spilling over the seat, right? Awesome guy, boisterous, funny, right? And so we got going. He's like, you ready? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, all right, we're all warmed up and ready to go. And he hit the gas. And I remember I was so focused on the 0 to 60 and so underwhelmed that I was like, oh, this car isn't really what I thought it was. And then we went into the first corner at 60 miles an hour. And I was like, holy shit. And then we accelerated at the end of the corner from 40 miles an hour to 150 miles an hour. And I was like, oh my God. 0 to 60 is for people who've never driven around a track before, because this is incredible. And that hammered it home for me.
Yep.
I have more, but I miss hearing you talk.
Well, I had a quick interjection as well we had a quick break and I looked up the F40 thing, the monocoque thing. It's the F40 is not a monocoque. It's a carbon Kevlar blended panels on top of a space frame steel tube chassis.
Yeah.
But my confusion came from that the panels on the carbon Kevlar panels are massive and encompass the entire vehicle almost as resembling a monocoque style.
Yeah.
And so that was my confusion on that part. It was actually funny. When I was first researching, I stumbled on a Reddit thread and there were people referring to it as a monocoque.
Yeah.
So I'm not the only one, but yes, the clarification is that it is a steel tube space frame chassis on a carbon Kevlar based panels.
I'm wondering if it's one of the first to use that style.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I just know that like my thing with it is like when I found it and started looking into it a little bit, I knew that like I was really bonded to like the character and the personality of that car.
Yeah.
And I was like, that really is me. And like, I don't know all the specs on it and stuff like that, but like, it's like one of those like things, I guess it was like a gut thing for me. I was like, that's really me.
Yeah.
Like I really connect with that.
Yeah.
And I've seen one in New York and I snuck into an area I wasn't supposed to in order to see it up close. And I stood there for probably 20 minutes, which is a long time to stand in front of one car. Right. And I just kind of looked at it and looked around and I was like, wow.
I mean, you were there when I saw the McLaren F1 for the first time at Reps.
Yeah, it's a similar experience. Yeah.
The first time I saw an F40 was on accident. I was in Atlanta, Georgia with my friend Sebastian. His mom's name is Margarita, that guy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we were driving around. He's the guy who I loved watching Fast and Furious with. We would drive around to different cars and coffees and stuff. And after the cars and coffees were done, we would drive to different dealerships just to see what they had. And there's one Ferrari dealership that was like an hour away, but we drove. And we got there and we walked in and there's like a 488, maybe like a 430. I don't really know most of the Ferraris. And I knew the F40 right away. I was like, whoa, it was in the parking lot. It had just been offloaded from the truck.
That's cool.
Empty parking lot. And so we like ran up to it and the guy came out and he was like, hey guys, how you doing? Just stand back. And we were like, okay. And he turned it on and drove it into the dealership, like through the big glass doors. And we hung out there for like 2 hours just talking about it.
That's cool.
And Sebastian didn't know what the car was at the time. And I didn't have all the information about it, but I knew the significance of the car. So it was still a special experience.
Yeah. No, they are very cool.
Yeah.
but yeah, racing has played a very racing and auto sports has played a very integral role in my upbringing and development. I think that I was thinking about it as I was writing the sheet, and racing has really been a grounding point for me across a majority of my life, if not all of my life. Like when I was a kid, even like I like to bring my Hot Wheels with me. Like when I was like kid, little boy, and I always loved watching motorsports. Once I got into karting, that was always the times I looked forward to most, and would take any opportunity I could get to go with my mom for the most part to go race at a track or go to a indoor kart track or whatever. And if I had a bad day at school or whatever, like racing was something that always kind of really lifted me up.
Right.
My mom used to say it brought the sparkle back into my eyes. That's what my mom used to say. Yeah, that's probably true because I don't think I do enough of it now. And I'm definitely suffering to some extent because I'm distanced from it.
Yeah.
And so, I've thought about this week, especially like maybe I should hop on the simulator and do some time. And I think I will this weekend. I've just been so slammed during the week this week, and that's how every week is.
Yeah.
I guess you make time for the things that are a priority for you.
But we have to go racing before our next recording here because it's part of the podcast. So
yeah, that is true. Yeah, we got to do some form of racing. So that'll be a good little experience. But yeah, racing has always been a grounding point for me. It's something I've always really loved, something I've always been attached to, and it's something that I found very easy to pursue diligently. It wasn't there was never a time when I was like, oh man, I have to go racing, or oh man, I have to study racecraft, or oh man, I have to go race online. Like I've never had one of those experiences. Like it was, regardless of how many hours I spent on it, it was always a treat to do it more.
right.
And I don't know. I don't think there's ever been anything else where I've felt that same way.
Yeah.
Like with business stuff, like there's many aspects of it that are just a chore,
Right.
and it sucks. But with racing, it was always something that I was like, wow, this is what I like. This is what I'm driven to do.
Yeah.
From a metaphorical and a literal sense. But it's been a valuable vehicle for my self improvement and growth too, because racing doesn't lie to you. Like if you suck, it's very clear. Like you will be slow.
Right.
And there are a million and one excuses on the face of the earth for why, but at the end of the day, there will always be at least a percentage that is down to your skill level and ability to drive.
Yeah.
And so there's always room for improvement. Even the best drivers have room for improvement. I mean, there were times when I think every track I ever got a track record on, I went back to race at. I didn't go get a track record and then be like, all right, I'm done, I'm good, right? Like I went back to do more and to see if I could go quicker and see if I could improve. And many times I continued to improve and improve. Like there was a really short circuit on this K1 speed track in uh, Wellington, Mass. Something like that.
Couldn't tell.
It was next to Reading, Reading, Massachusetts. But anyways, I went to that track and I set the record and it was a 14.4. And then I went back and I got down to a 14.3 and then a 14.2 and then a 14.1 and then a 14 flat and then a 13.9. And that's where it's at. And that's where it still sits today.
Right.
And so it's like I can like racing has always been that, like there's always a little bit left and you can always do a little bit better and you can always persevere, and the hold up to your success by some percentage is your ability to drive well, and that's always something you can improve, and therefore you can always improve your time to some extent.
Yeah.
And so I've always enjoyed, it's been a very hard mirror for me. Like when I haven't been the quickest, it's like, okay, why? You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, I got to put more work in, I got to put more effort. And there's a very direct correlation between input and output.
Yeah.
And that's a good learning experience. I think there are a lot of things in business where your inputs don't always seem as though they're correlated to your outputs. And in racing too, like there's many times where I would practice or read books and I'd still be slow. Right. And so it wasn't directly correlated to my output. But racing was cool because you would see the potential in some metric. Like
Yeah.
racing inherently is like has a lot of metrics that you track. And so you're inherently forced to look at those metrics and understand them. And therefore, the more metrics you have, the more opportunities you have to see success forming. Even if the lap times aren't getting better, you can see, you know, your G-force profile or your straightaway velocity speed or your braking point, or like there's a bunch of different things that you can track, and you can see, okay, I'm improving here. Maybe the broad picture isn't faster yet, but I'm improving here, right?
Right.
With business, I think that your inputs are always correlated to your outputs because you always learn something from your inputs. But with business, you have to figure out largely what metrics you are going to track in order to understand how your output is going to change,
Right.
right? Like me tracking, what time the sun rises versus how much money I make on ads might not be a great correlation to track in terms of ad performance.
Right.
But for me to track return on ad spend might be a better one, right?
Right.
But in there's more to that too. Like, you start maybe with return on ad spend, but then you also go to cost per click. And then maybe you go to frequency metrics to figure out if your ad is being used as a initial target ad or a retargeting ad. Like there's a bunch of things that you could do. And as you go along, you acquire more understanding of more metrics, and therefore you have more places where you can kind of put the pin of success, like this was successful here or that was successful, but it doesn't inherently start out that way. So there's a period of grind where you're just kind of putting in inputs and you're not really sure if the output is working.
Right.
With racing, what's cool is that if you put an input, inherently because of the structure of the sport, you have the opportunity to like see the output working live, and you have like set foundation of what's working well, what's not working well. Like
Right.
there's not too much ambiguity to start. And as you go on, you still acquire more metrics that you track and you learn a whole slew of things, but inherently to the sport, there is something that staples you in that what's your time through these sectors, like this
Right.
sector, this sector, this sector. And there's clear avenues that you can go down at least to start. And that kind of framework helps me develop a mindset of, instead of looking at problems and kind of looking at the abyss and going, oh, I don't really know, there's so much. I look at problems and I go, okay, where can I start? What can I look at first? Maybe it's not right, but I can start somewhere. And that racing kind of, in a way, provided that framework where it set up the foundation to where I can, at least have a point of reference to start with.
Yeah.
And on top of that, perseverance and hard work and dedication and trial and error. And,
Yeah.
I mean, the racing experience has taught me so much. It's funny. A lot of my track records I've been able to get by implementing recommendations from people who had more experience than me, but were slower because they couldn't implement the things that they saw in other people that were faster. So they'd have all these things in their head of like, I want to do this, I want to do this, but they didn't have the skill set in order to implement it. But then they talk to me about it. And on paper, it's like, why would you listen to this person? They're 2 seconds slower than you. But I take their information, I'm able to utilize it. And now suddenly I go from being the fastest on the track by half a second to being the fastest on the track by 7/10 of a second.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that process. And also my mom, funny enough, was like good at like pointing out like where I'm slower, where I'm quicker, which is kind of interesting because like she's never been in a kart or a race car and like doesn't hate. She loves watching me race because she loves watching me be happy, but she
Yeah.
hates the speed and like the risk side of it.
Right.
And so it's funny, but
She's like, I feel most comfortable in turn 6, and you're like, fuck, I'm going slow there.
Yeah. But it's interesting because racing, yes, dedication, hard work, and all those things, but it also taught me things about like communication and understanding and looking at things from different angles and being able to assess yourself and look in the mirror at what you're really doing wrong or what you can improve. And like really was a staple self-reflection point in my journey.
Yeah, the ability to recognize what you need to do and then actually executing it is physically really difficult.
Mm.
And that's something that rowing gave me because like I remember I was a sophomore in I was a sophomore in high school and I was in the 2V, so the second fastest boat on my high school team. And my coach kept telling me, he was like, "Mason, you need to carry your hands higher on the recovery." But I couldn't carry my hands any higher or else my blade would hit the water. And so I would always carry my blade like this far off the water, like just barely. And my coach just kept saying it. He was like, hands higher, hands higher, hands higher. And I was like, listen up, dude. If I carry my hands any higher, my blade's gonna drag on the water. He was like, I don't care. And I was like, I do. I don't want my hands on like I don't want my blade to drag on the water. I cannot do it. And he was like, you have to figure it out. And actually like making my body carry my hands a quarter of an inch higher changed the set of the boat such that my hands were higher, but the blade wasn't touching the water.
Mm.
And actually getting your body to do what your mind is thinking it's already doing is really challenging. And I had that in college with catching faster. Like I thought I was catching as fast as humanly possible, right? But what I realized was I wasn't catching fast, I was catching early. The rate at which my blade vertically moved was really slow. I just started doing it sooner, meaning I was missing more water.
Mm.
And I worked on that for like 2 whole years. And it wasn't until my junior year of college that I actually figured it out and got good at it. But we call it coachability, which is if the coach tells you to do something, can you make your body do it? Because it's way harder to do than you think it is. And with rowing, I mean, it's a complex motion, but really at the end of the day, your legs are doing the same thing. It's just like, at what rate do you move your legs? At what rate do you move your back? And at what rate do you move your hands?
Yeah.
Right. And I had this realization with driving the other day, which is the only inputs that you have in racing is flexing your ankles and then moving your forearms and wrists. That's it. Those are the only inputs that you have. Right. But the inputs that you give, I should say, but the inputs that you get are
And
full
maybe
body.
body weight, you know?
In karting, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we were talking cars.
Yeah, just full
Oh,
cars.
sorry. Yeah,
Full
yeah,
size
yeah.
cars.
Sure.
Well, because recently I had been working on left foot braking in Grace's car because I
Oh,
found that I
yeah.
could only go all on or on off. There's no finesse. I've gotten much better at it. And now I'm focusing in the Camaro, not on left foot braking because I drive a manual and I right foot brake, but on being supple with my hand inputs and listening to the car through my hands by being very gentle on the steering wheel, despite the number of corrections I have to make because of how loose my steering is. But that's the new thing that I'm focusing on. But it's interesting because I get inputs through the steering wheel and through the pedals, but also through my whole body. And then where you have the car placed on the road is like a third person perspective of the inputs that you're doing, which is even more difficult than just, can you raise your hands faster into the catch, right? But rowing taught me a great deal about how to get your body to do something that you can conceptualize. And I think that lends itself well to driving. Especially if I get more training and more seat time. What else do I have here? So Donut Media taught me about Group B Rally. That was my first experience with like actually enjoying watching racing happen. I watched full rally events. And then I started watching F1 halfway through the 2018 season. This was like peak Hamilton dominance. So I used the first of my Hamilton dominance years to understand the basics of like, how do the competitive sessions work? How does qualifying work? You know, what's the fundamentals? And then in 2019, I got the Xbox game and started to understand how everything works like within a race or within a qualifying session and who the drivers are. And then Drive to Survive helped me understand like behind the scenes what was going on. Again, Hamilton dominance, so the racing itself isn't super interesting. And then in 2020, you know, I've got it down. Now I'm into it. Now I'm, following it meticulously and religiously. And Hamilton's dominance indeed did start to bore fans. I was one of them. Bono, my tires are gone, started to lose its luster. Drive to Survive was no longer interesting because it was more drama than anything else at that point. Interestingly, I just found an article the other day. Have you heard the Max Verstappen quote, God may be with him, but he's not God?
Yeah.
He said that about Lewis Hamilton in the 2020 F1 season. Going into 2021, which was ultimately, or I'm sorry, it was at the start of the 2020 season. And most of that season was affected by COVID. But in that same interview, Max said, they were like, hey, you think you can beat Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes? He's won like the last fucking 10 years. And Max was like, yeah, I think that if we can just start the season within 2/10, I can start to put enough pressure on that he'll start making mistakes. And they were like, he's the greatest driver to ever live. What makes you think that? And he was like, yeah, well, when you're far and away the fastest, you can drive at 97 or 98% and not make mistakes. But if you're put under pressure, you might make mistakes in that last 2%, and I'll take him there. And that's exactly what he did in 2021. And then from then on, and even in 2023, when Max had the fastest car, I don't think he was at 98% very often because he would still like almost lose the car trying to go as fast as possible.
I mean, he would pit to get on super sauce on the last lap, 20 seconds in the lead just because he wanted the fastest lap point when he had no reason to.
Yeah. And that is very reminiscent to me of the Senna at Monaco style of I'm just going to go as fast as possible every lap, no matter how far in the lead I am.
Yeah.
This quote's been coming up in my Instagram feed a lot of Prost asking his radio engineer, like, how far ahead is Senna? And then they respond with, you're the only person he hasn't lapped yet, which is wild. And Senna finished that race like a minute 24 seconds ahead of Prost or something like that. It's crazy. But yeah, in my time watching racing, and I've gone back and watched the Vettel races and even some of the Hamilton dominance races from the 2015, 2016 season. I've gone back and rewatched a lot of Formula One that I wasn't able to watch live in person. And the races that stick out to me are the ones with Max and Senna, which is just pushing like crazy, even when they don't have to.
Yeah.
Not the very Alain Prost style of win the race as slow as you can. Not really. Doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah, I've always kind of gone balls to the wall too. I've always loved it,
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Just pushing as hard as you can, no matter what, and just driving and driving and driving.
Yeah. And that, also teaches you in real life to just work as hard as you can, right?
Yes.
Or maybe I should say my passion for pushing as hard as I can in racing has translated to pushing as hard as I can in my daily life, which has enabled me to do better at business and work.
Right.
Right. That's all I got.
Well, I have a couple other small things.
Okay.
I wanted to tell a quick story, and then I got a little tie-in, and then we can do our dial-in. So I want to tell a little personal anecdotal story too. One other additional thing that kind of racing and motorsports has taught me, but I was racing in California, in Los Angeles, and I was renting a shifter car and doing like a practice session, and it was a passive practice session, but I was faster than this other shifter car in front of me. And so I went around him on the straight, and then coming into one of the other corners, he hit me from behind, bumped me. And I was really concerned because the guy I was renting the shifter cart from was like really strict, really strict.
Right.
He was like, if you bump this car, you touch this car, you damage anything, you own it. And it was a $20,000 brand new cart.
Jesus Christ. And then someone hit you from behind.
Yeah, right. And so I got super stressed out, and I pulled into the pits, and I was freaking out, and I was like, I was like, Mom, like, we can't afford this. Like, it wasn't this guy bumped me. Like, we can't buy this car, right? And there was no damage. There was like a small scratch on the bumper, right?
God.
But like in my mind, I was like, he said, if I damage it, I own it. And in my mind, I damaged it. So I was freaking out, and the owner was like super passive. He was super chill. I think the reason that he was really stringent at the start was because he didn't know me.
Right.
I was young, and he didn't want me to put it in a fucking wall and then walk home. Right. So, he was very nice. He was like, no, dude, like, I totally get it. And, but that experience was like my first eye opener to what could I have done differently, or what could I have done better to change the outcome of the situation? Because the guy who hit me came up to me and he was like, well, you passed me, so you wanted to race. And I was like, I didn't want to race. You were just dogging me because you were going 2 seconds a lap slower.
But also,
I didn't want to
bumping
race.
me isn't racing, bruh.
Right, but he was like this redneck style of guy. He was a NASCAR guy that evolved into shifter car racing, right?
So he doesn't know how to race without crashing out people in front of him.
He's a bumper driver, and so in his mind that was racing, and so in my mind I was like, okay, like that was my first eye opener to like my alternative could have been dogging a lap for 5 or 10 seconds and then finishing out my practice session without having to interact with him, right? And that experience was kind of like my first one, for one of my earlier experiences, at least in racing, of like, how can I make this issue that I have no clue how to solve my problem in the future, so that I have the opportunity to either not be in it or solve it. Right. And so I think racing has been valuable to me in that sense as well. But I wanted to bring up, so I wrote the 1983 Rally Championship story up, and then also did a brief history on Enzo Ferrari as well. And I did these because I thought they were interesting and super cool and fun, and hopefully you all enjoyed them. But additionally, I wanted to outline a couple things that I think racing and business can tie together on. And when Audi went to the governing body WRC and said, hey, can we get rid of this four-wheel drive rule? And everyone said yes. And then they went ahead and they made the most dominant car in rally history for 1982, or one of the most, right? How do you think those teams felt scrambling to make four-wheel drive into 1983? And how do you think other people looked at Lancia? Lancia just being like, we're just going to do what we know. We're going to make a rear-wheel drive car. We're going to use a couple of tricks up our sleeve that we know. We're just going to race, and we're going to do what we do well, right? And it's like, how do you, like, I can imagine in retrospect, it's like, oh, well, Lancia won, so they're like the underdog. This is so cool. But in that moment, they weren't the underdog. They were the one looked down on. They were the one of like, you guys are idiots. Why don't you make a four-wheel drive system? Right. And so in that respect, like other people looking at you like you're crazy, but then to prevail in that way is a real shock to the norm. And I think that's something that's hard to see unless you have an outlook that's greater than the immediate future. Or you have, the foresight of looking at your history and understanding how things flow and go, right? And I'm sure that Lancia looked at Audi and said, they've got a good car and it's quick, but also this is brand new tech and we've been involved with this for 30 years. And we know that new tech cars always have issues. And so we're going to do what we know well. We're going to take advantages of what we can, but new technology always has problems. And Audi in 3 of these races had major engineering failures. Right. And so then the other thing I want to outline too is that when Enzo was born in 1898.
Can I interrupt you real quick? Applying the lesson that this car taught me to that, it would be really easy as a fan at that time or a spectator to say, oh, everyone else is shitting on Lancia because they're, sticking to what they think they know. Right. And they're idiots. So fuck them. But I bet if you sat down in the engineering room with the Lancia engineers, they could say, hey, listen, they could rationalize their position. They could say, we have this down pat perfect. So it's us knowing that we could be perfect versus Audi at 80% capacity with this new tech. And so if you sat down and understood what their intent was, then the interpretation that everyone else had looking at Lancia would be put into light, right? Similarly, how, I looked at people who owned Ferraris that were assholes about it and didn't look at the actual true spirit of the cars.
And then the Enzo story I wrote up, and I wanted to outline a couple things about it, is Enzo Ferrari was born in 1898. He went to his first Grand Prix 10 years later, and then he served in the war from 1916 until 1918. And so I want to outline this specific band of time, because from when he was born until he was 21 years old, because he first started racing in 1919. So when he was first born until 21, it took 10 years for him to see his first race. And then after that point, born into a metal fabrication family that was poor in Modena, from 1908 to 1916, he worked in that metal fab shop or with his dad for 8 years. And then in the preceding 2 years, after seeing this race happen, he worked in the shop for 8 years, dreaming about this thing. And then he went to war, probably thinking he's going to die in World War I. And then while he's at war, his father and his brother die, and he falls ill. And so it's like, I think a lot of people will read like historical accounts of stories and they'll be like, oh yeah, this happened, but like, this is coming, right? But like in this moment, in 1918, when Enzo had lost his father, lost his brother, he was sick. He'd been pushed into World War I. He was working in a steel fab shop, prior to that. He'd seen, a handful of races, and he'd always dreamed about it, but he had no clue how to get there. Him as a kid, as a 20-year-old kid, and then as a 21-year-old kid, starting to race with CMN at Targo Florio, like this, like smaller company, right? Like, I am sure that there were people who were like, "You'll never make it." You like, this is crazy. You're a kid from Modena who grew up in a steel fab shop, and like now your dad and your brother died, and like you went to war, and like you fell sick, and like how are you gonna persevere through this? Like there's so much opportunity to give up, and it's not just like 3 bullet points on a list. This is like 20 years of life, 20 years, and it's like I think that really brings into perspective like. I looked at that and I was like, man, like I get frustrated with when ads don't work and when ad accounts don't work. And I started this in February.
Mhm.
I've been at it for 4 months with this specific business. I've been dropshipping a little longer, but even so, like, the dreams are fostering. And my timeline, looking at it as I go through it, feels long. But looking back on it and comparing to other great success stories and incredible visionaries and people who have changed this world, like, no one has created Scuderia Ferrari in 4 months.
Mhm.
It's impossible, right? It took him until 1960 to start his production car side.
Right.
And it's like, that is something. And then he died in 88. Like, the some of the really great, I would argue all of the really great achievements and accomplishments in life come with the tax of time. And looking back on it, it seems like, well, he's Enzo Ferrari, of course he's gonna make it. But, like, being in it after experiencing that, it takes someone really strong-willed to see the light at the end of the tunnel they're going through.
Mhm.
And so I wanna take a moment, to appreciate, the dedication that Enzo Ferrari put throughout his life in order to bring us some of the most incredible automobiles and one of the most incredible racing teams of our time,
Mhm.
but also take a moment to appreciate that, like, dreams and goals, and specifically in our case, racing related dreams and goals, like, they f- there are so many steps along the path, but it can be so attainable given perseverance, drive, and the willing to be patient through time,
Mhm.
yet consistent.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to take a moment to reflect on those two stories and kind of bring that mindset in and wrap it into business
Yeah.
as well. But I thought that was like, I thought it would be an interesting reflection point. Long story short.
That's one of the reasons I love this podcast is because
Yeah.
we'll be able to go back and watch the podcast that happened like the day before your Baba dies. And then we'll be able to go back and watch the podcast the day before like we turn our first million, right? Like you never know what tomorrow is going to be like, and the disposition that you hold today is hugely determinant on what happens tomorrow, right? So, like, imagine if you could see an Enzo podcast from 1918 before he
Yeah.
entered his first
Yeah.
race, right? And then similarly, if you could see Enzo's podcast before his first race win in with his own cars, right, or
Yeah.
something like that, right? Um, or an Enzo podcast from the day before he went to war, right? Before he went to war, he was probably like, I'm working at this steel fab shop. I'm figuring out how to like design car chassis. Like, I'm so excited to build my own cars. And then like the next day something gets bombed and he has to go to war, right? And like all that gets put on pause or thrown out the window.
Yep.
It's like Robert Kiyosaki flying helicopters, right?
Yeah.
Like he was like, I'm gonna go into business, and then he was like, actually, I'm gonna go to the Air Force, and then I'll come back later, or Marines. I forget what branch he was
Yeah.
in. But so I think that something that both of those two stories have in common is, um, regardless of what they had to do in the meantime, they still had the same goal long term, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I just I wanted to throw that in as
Hmm.
a tidbit,
Yeah.
and feel free to take us away into the dial in.
I have several today. I couldn't pick one, so I wrote down like five. One that I didn't write down is Kyle Larson's quote saying that he's faster than Max Verstappen, which aged well as this weekend. Yeah, he competed in the double, which is in racing in the IndyCar 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. Interestingly, the travel time to get from the IndyCar to Coca-Cola, you have to leave IndyCar early, which he was fortunate enough to do as he put it in the wall, downshifting while accelerating on lap 2. And then he went to the Coca-Cola 600 where he took the lead on lap 9 before putting it in the wall unprovoked on lap 43. So I don't know if I have those lap numbers right, but that aged well. Meanwhile, Max finished 4th in Monaco with probably the 5th fastest car on the grid. So that's good. Let's see. One of my favorite quotes that I have here is speed costs money. How fast do you want to go?
Sure.
And that feels specifically applicable because we're at a place such as this, right?
Yeah.
But my all-time favorite quote, given that today's theme was on Monaco and Ferrari, is when I think of Monaco and Ferrari, I only think of Michael Schumacher, right? This quote is from Murray Walker, who's a commentator speaking on the Monaco Grand Prix that Michael won. And so he was talking through the starting grid, the starting lineup, and he said there are 7 winners of the Monaco Grand Prix on the starting line today, and 4 of them are Michael Schumacher. That's so cool.
It is cool.
All right, that's all I got.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this AMCM special.
Thank you, AMCM, for letting us record here. We're excited to come back in a few weeks and do a Porsche episode.
Yes.
This is what we're doing next.
Yeah, Porsche theme. So
yeah, maybe we'll bring some racing footage that time to talk about what to talk about the
that'd be
Porsches.
cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, massive thank you to the AMCM and Ed and Andrew and Mark and everyone who made this possible for us. And then an additional shout out, as said earlier, to the AMCM's long-term support of the SAE team and Florida Tech and the various events and sponsorships that they hold here. It's is an incredible place, an incredible opportunity to be here. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
And we will see you next time.